You're walking through ruins that shouldn't exist. There are no signs, no crowds, just stone where stone has no reason to be. A perfect circle beneath the sea. A whispering corridor carved by forgotten hands. A pyramid that breathes when the earth shifts. The sun breaks over the horizon, and suddenly a shadow moves across an ancient gate. Not on the wall, in the air. You pause. You listen. And somewhere in the silence, the past exhales. You're not supposed to see these things. They don't appear in textbooks. No one shows you this on a guided tour. These are the forgotten places, the ones that don't fit the story we've been told. Cities with no bones, roads that lead to nowhere, monuments made of salt that survive the rain and then dissolve into memory. They're too strange, too quiet, too perfect in the wrong ways. And maybe that's the point. Because the world isn't always eager to explain itself. And history only tells us what we ask the right way. Now, fair warning, if you've come here looking for closure, for neat little answers tied up with a bow, you're going to be disappointed. You'll get mystery, echoes, footprints that walk right off the edge of the map. But you probably won't survive this with your certainty intact. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Also, tell me where you're watching from tonight and what time it is there. I always love seeing that part. Now turn off the lights. Maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started on tonight's journey together. You shuffle along a misty hillside somewhere in western Scotland. The grass is high. The sky is wide and gray. And there in the middle of it all stands a stone. It's not massive, not like Stonehenge. Just one upright monolith with a flat black face. Nothing fancy. Just old. You glance at your phone. Summer solstice. Early morning. And right on cue, the sunlight creeps across the hills like it knows where it's going. It hits the stone just right, and suddenly bam, it gleams like obsidian. It reflects not just the sky, but something more. You feel it before you understand it. The air gets weird, like it's heavier even though it's not. Your pulse slows, not out of fear, but something stranger. Stillness, presence, like you've wandered into someone's memory without meaning to. And now that stone, it remembers you too. It doesn't glow for long, 3, maybe 4 minutes. Then the light shifts, the gleam fades. The stone is just a rock again. But you're not the same anymore. You've seen something you weren't supposed to. Something old enough to have no name. Something that doesn't explain itself because it doesn't care if you understand. That's where our journey begins, at the edge of what we know, where questions pile up like fallen ruins, and the only thing louder than silence is mystery. So, tonight, we go looking not for answers, but for the places that never ask to be found. You step off the cobbled tourist trail in southern Italy and into a place the brochures forgot. The air smells faintly of ash, even though the sky is clear. You're not in Pompeii, not the famous one. You're about 6 miles away down a quiet road past a low wall and some overgrown hedges, walking into the hushed remains of a city most people don't even know exists. It's called Oplantis, or maybe it isn't. Names change when no one's around to defend them, but that's what archaeologists call it, and they seem fairly confident. Though confidence in archaeology is often just a placeholder. For we're not sure yet. What we are sure of is this Oplantis was here before Pompeii's Day of Doom. And for reasons no one really understands, it didn't die in a blaze of panic. it was quiet. Too quiet. You brush past a small fig tree, and the first thing that hits you is color. Deep reds. Blues so vivid they don't seem fair. You're standing in front of frescoes, actual ancient wall paintings that haven't been touched up yet. They look like someone painted them last Tuesday. The walls belong to something called Villa Pompeii, named after Nero's second wife, Poppaea Sabina. Supposedly, this was her retreat, if you can call a 90-room palace with hidden corridors and marble columns a retreat. It sprawls, with a kind of wealth that doesn't just whisper power, it sings it operatically. But here's where things start to get weird. This place, unlike the nearby cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum, doesn't show signs of chaos. No frantic skeletons clutching jewelry. No overturned bowls of food. In fact, many rooms seem almost peaceful. Too peaceful. Some tools are left mid-job columns, half-installed murals, only half-painted. It looks like the workers stepped out for lunch and never came back. Historians still debate whether the people of Oplantis were simply lucky or whether they knew. Because buried under the volcanic layers that covered the villa, there are actually two distinct ash deposits. One matches the famous eruption in 79 AD. The other, older, fainter, possibly from a smaller quake or eruption years earlier. That alone isn't so strange. Volcanoes like Vesuvius rumble for decades before they roar. But it raises a question: if the city was hit earlier and people fled, why did no one come back? That's when you notice what's not here. No cooking tools in use, no signs of active kitchens, no children's toys, no household shrines. Those little protective deities almost every Roman home had tucked into a corner. It's not the absence of objects that's chilling, it's the deliberate vacuum. Like someone came in and removed the soul of the place before the ash ever had a chance to do its job. Underneath the villa lies something even stranger, a water system. Not your average bathhouse pipes or fountains. These are deep aquifers, aqueduct-like channels, cut with alarming precision. Some align with solar cycles. Others seem to tap deeper than the surrounding region normally allows, pulling water from some secret undercurrent. Now ask yourself, why does a single villa need that? One theory suggests that this was never meant to be just a home. It may have been a safe house, a royal emergency exit in case Rome got too hot politically. Another theory, more radical, says it was a node in an ancient network, a remnant of trade or power not tied to Rome at all, but to older, shadowy cultures like the Etruscans, or even something pre-Roman too long forgotten to leave a name. The art on the walls backs this up. Though technically, the frescoes are off. They're layered in ways not typical of the time, their symbolism cryptic, echoing older styles. Not merely decorative, almost ritual. And then there's the Black Room. Tucked deep inside the villa is a chamber painted entirely in red and black. No windows, no furniture, just shallow niches carved into the walls, too small for statues, too regular to be decorative. Some archaeologists call it a ritual space. Others avoid the word. You walk through the silence of that room and can't help but feel it pressure, like standing in the pause before thunder. And the oddest part, there's so much of this site left unexcavated. Ground-penetrating radar shows roads beneath the earth, marketplaces, entire homes, possibly a forum, but very little has been dug up. Officially, the reason is funding, preservation, prioritizing more famous ruins. Unofficially, some say what's already been found is enough to raise too many questions about how we understand Roman history, about what came before, about what we've chosen not to remember. beneath the lowest layers of the villa soil analysis revealed even older volcanic deposits dating back thousands of years before Rome. Some match known eruptions, others don't. One layer even suggests settlement here during a period when no Roman records mention life in the area at all. Could Oplantis have been built on the bones of something older? Something erased. Maybe that's why it sits so quietly. Maybe the people who once lived here weren't just fleeing fire. Maybe they were sealing something off. You walk out toward the back garden, or what's left of it. Volcanic dust coats the ancient paving stones. Above you, the sky is impossibly blue, as if the air itself doesn't care what's buried beneath. Birds begin to stir. Somewhere in the distance, a Vespa engine hums along a modern street. But you stand here, among the walls that still echo, wondering why did they leave? And what were they trying to keep hidden? Whatever it was, it's still here, waiting, high above the clouds, where the Himalayas cut into the sky like a jagged breath. There's a valley so remote, even Google doesn't bother mapping it in full detail. You're not supposed to be here. Most people never even try. But one day, a group of climate scientists did, and that's how they found the library. Not a library in the traditional sense. There are no grand pillars or high windows with light streaming in. There are no desks, no archivists whispering about overdue returns. This one is buried beneath a collapsed monastery, hidden under frost and stone, where the snow falls, not in flurries, but in whispers. They found it by accident, like most of the good stories start. A landslide had shifted the terrain slightly, revealing symmetrical stone patterns no one expected to see. From the air, it looked like part of a ruined temple complex, but once they got closer, something didn't sit right. There were no familiar inscriptions, no known architectural markers, just sealed doors and heavy silence. The team dug carefully more out of curiosity than intent, and what they found wrapped in hardened cloth, preserved by sub-zero temperatures, were scrolls. Dozens, then hundreds, stacked in alcoves, hidden in stone cabinets, still pliable, still legible, still there. Some were written on bark, some on cloth, a few on an unidentified fiber that shimmered faintly in the light. Most were covered in a language no one recognized, not Sanskrit, not Pali, not any dialect spoken in the region for centuries. The script was sinuous, flowing across between geometry and dream, and among those scrolls were maps, not of rivers and roads, but stars, constellations that don't appear on modern charts, movements tracked over centuries. Some scholars believe the star paths recorded here might predate known Himalayan astronomy. Others go further. They suggest that these people didn't just map the stars. They believed the stars mapped them. You kneel inside one of the frost-bitten chambers and gently touch the leather wrapping of a scroll. It's stiff, but not brittle. The cold preserved it better than any vault ever could. A world frozen mid-thought. One scroll, only partially translated through phonetic comparison, refers to the year the sky fell twice. No date, no location. Just that chilling phrase. Some believe it's a reference to a meteor strike. Others think it could mean something more metaphorical, the fall of a belief system or a dynasty. But deeper into the complex, in a chamber separated by a long, narrow corridor etched with spiral carvings, the researchers found something stranger still. 5 scrolls, not wrapped in leather, but in wax-treated cloth, and written vertically on bark soaked in resin. The ink was black and dense, almost charred in appearance. These were not medical texts or farming records or star maps. These were declarations, sermons. One began with a line that hit the translator like a whisper at the base of the spine. "We write this, not for now, but for when the snow breathes again." You sit back against the icy stone wall, letting that sentence echo. They weren't writing for themselves. They weren't even writing for their children. They were writing for us, and they buried their truths in a place only desperation or disaster would ever lead us to. Some of the scrolls contain illustrations plants that don't exist anymore, diagrams of rituals involving heat and resonance, daily weather logs that stretch unbroken for what seems like centuries. They weren't just keeping knowledge, they were trying to hold onto identity. And here's where things start to get weird. The researchers couldn't explain the acoustics inside the chambers. Sounds echoed strangely, like you were speaking inside a lung. Instruments malfunctioned. Batteries drained faster than they should. One archaeologist described a recurring dream, a room of white light, no source, and silent figures with covered faces. The kicker: multiple team members described almost the same dream. Historians still debate whether this library was a place of refuge or something more. There are no signs of surrounding settlements, no fields, no evidence of trade. So who built this, and why here? One theory suggests it was a time capsule, a last stand for a vanishing people who knew they wouldn't be remembered unless they made the earth do it for them. Another theory, more speculative, says this wasn't a library, it was a warning. Think about it. The scrolls are hidden, sealed, preserved. They're not meant to be read casually. They were meant to be found deliberately, like a message in a bottle cast not into the sea, but into time itself. The scrolls have no author names, no government seals, no flags or crests or ownership marks. It's as if the people who created this place cared less about being credited and more about being heard. Eventually. And maybe that's the strangest thing of all. Not what they wrote, but why they bothered writing it at all. Because to climb to this height, to carve chambers into frozen stone, to wrap your thoughts in bark and wax and resin, and then seal it all behind ice and silence, that's not a casual act. That's belief. Belief that someone you might find it someday, might read it, might understand enough to ask the right questions. The team eventually had to seal the chambers back up to preserve the microclimate. Helicopters couldn't reach the site consistently due to altitude. They left sensors inside, and the structure has remained undisturbed since. But the scrolls, they're still being translated. Slowly, carefully. One expert said the scrolls might take decades to fully decode. Another whispered, almost jokingly, maybe they were never meant to be decoded. Maybe they were meant to remind us what forgetting looks like. So you walk away from that cave wind biting your skin, snow crunching underfoot. The sky is impossibly clear. The stars above you unfamiliar. You glance back just once. The stones don't shimmer. The scrolls are hidden again, but you can't shake the feeling that something in there is still watching, still listening, still waiting for the snow to breathe again. You didn't mean to find it. No one did. It began with a glitch, a strange pixelated shape beneath the windswept dunes of northern Sudan. A satellite image flagged by a low-level AI, trained to recognize roads and settlements. At first, it looked like just another heat distortion. But then someone zoomed in. Perfect angles. Long, linear formations beneath the sand. a grid-like pattern buried beneath centuries of red dust. Too straight to be natural, too complex to be dismissed. You're looking at the ghost of a city that doesn't appear on any map. No historical document mentions it. No oral tradition recalls it. And yet, there it is, etched beneath the Bayuda Desert, like a breath held forever. Ground teams are dispatched. What they find on foot is underwhelming at first, just dunes, some scattered stones, a few unnatural elevations. But the sand tells a story. In places it's compacted in strange ways, crusted over. In others, it reveals the bare edge of a carved sandstone block, just enough to prove that someone had been here, and they'd been precise. The team brushes back more sand. They find pottery shards, blackened red with faint, almost alien markings. Not Egyptian, not Kushite, not even Meroitic. These fragments don't belong anywhere. Some bear fine tool impressions that suggest sharper instruments than bone or wood. Others are completely smooth, as if shaped by hands far more advanced than expected. But it's not just the artifacts that defy logic. It's the layout. From above, using high-resolution scans, a city emerges. Blocked roads straight as arrows. A central plaza. And at the heart of it all, a massive oval depression, perfectly ringed with low walls. Here's the catch. Nothing about that central structure matches African urban planning from any known period. Not circular, like the early Nubian villages. Not rectilinear, like Roman colonies. It's foreign, deliberate, out of place. Historians still debate whether this oval structure was ceremonial, astronomical, or something far stranger. What they do know is this: it goes deep. Ground-penetrating radar reveals concentric levels stacked downward like a spiral staircase carved into the earth. Some call it a reverse ziggurat. Others whisper the word vault. At the bottom, the radar picks up something dense, something reflective, possibly metal, but no one's reached it yet. The sand shifts too easily. The heat is too brutal. Funding vanishes as quickly as it comes. And still, it waits. You walk across the dunes' boots, sinking into red dust, and try to imagine what this place once looked like. Was it bustling? Or was it always meant to be hidden? That's the thing. There are no temples here. No idols. No weapons. No graves. A city with no gods and no dead. Just silence and geometry. Some scholars suggest it was never a city in the traditional sense. Maybe it was a ceremonial site. Maybe even a map. A vast architectural sigil carved into the earth, visible only from above, like the Nazca lines of Peru, but buried. Others think it was a vault, built not to house the living, but to store something, knowledge perhaps, or memory, or even fear. One detail gives you chills. Around the site, set at precise distances, are upright stones, each only about 3 feet tall. No inscriptions, no carvings, just there, standing, watching. They're nicknamed sentinel stones, and each one aligns with a different star, but not Polaris, not our North Star. Their alignment suggests a sky thousands of years older than ours. That places this city, if we dare call it that, before all known civilizations in Northeast Africa, before Egypt, before Kush, before any kingdom had a name. And here's the part no one wants to say out loud: it may have been buried on purpose. Natural desertification takes time. Sand moves slowly, but this site was blanketed too cleanly, too symmetrically. The layering is smooth, even, compact, not chaotic. Geologists quietly note that the compacted crust on top doesn't match the wind-blown layers beneath. Something covered this place, deliberately, as if the builders didn't want it found. But why? Was it sacred dangerous? Abandoned in grief or fear? You walk to the edge of the central depression. The wind is picking up. A fine mist of sand curls across your boots, brushing your calves like fingertips. You crouch, pressing a hand to the surface. It's warm, warmer than the air. Not by much, but enough to be unsettling. It hums, you think. Or maybe that's just your pulse. In one uncovered chamber, researchers found no artifacts, only smooth walls, and a floor covered in strange, swirling grooves. Not decoration, not language, just pattern. One expert claimed the groove layout resembles a type of harmonic resonance diagram, something that reacts to vibration. A sound chamber, perhaps. Others aren't convinced. But they don't have better theories. And that's what makes this place so infuriating. Everything here is too intentional to dismiss, but not familiar enough to classify. There's no Rosetta Stone, no tomb to open, no deity to question. Just a city beneath the red sands that doesn't belong to anyone and refuses to explain itself. Some believe it was a cradle, a place where early knowledge was seeded then buried once it had served its purpose. Others think it was a warning, but maybe it's something even more dangerous. A memory we're not ready to remember. You stand one last time at the center of the spiral. You close your eyes. The wind roars, suddenly pushing sand against your skin, like grit against glass. When you open your eyes again, the shape is already fading. The oval is blurring. The lines softening. The desert is reclaiming it right before your eyes. A breath held again, a story sealed in silence. And you walk away, the only sound behind you, the hiss of the sand like a whisper, pulling the lid closed. It's not even visible until you're almost standing on top of it. You trudge through the edge of an ancient Mesopotamian marshland, the air thick with humidity, and reeds your boots, sinking slightly into mud that's deceptively soft. There's nothing here but birdsong dragonflies and the whisper of wind sliding across the surface of the swamp. And then you see it. At first it looks like a rock. Nothing special, just another boulder, half covered in moss and silt. But the angles are wrong. Too crisp. Too deliberate. The closer you get, the more it comes into focus, rising out of the marsh like something half swallowed and half forgotten. It's an obelisk, a towering stone monolith that should not be here, not in this waterlogged, forgotten place, far from any road or ruin. 25 feet of visible stone, weathered, leaning slightly streaked with algae, but unmistakably carved. Granite, not limestone. And that's your first clue that something is off. Granite doesn't come from here. The nearest natural source is hundreds of miles away, across difficult terrain. Even with modern trucks, hauling a stone like this would be a challenge. But there are no tracks, no chisel marks, no drag scars. Just the stone standing silently, as if it's always been here. You circle the base. The lower half is buried deep in the muck. No one knows how far it extends. The top tapers like a needle, its eastern face polished smoother than the rest, catching the early light in a way that feels precise. And it is. During the equinox, that polished face catches the morning sun, perfectly flush, not angled. For exactly 3 minutes, it glows gold. Not metaphorically, literally. Like someone aligned it just to catch that sliver of time when day and night balance on the edge of a blade. Historians still debate whether the obelisk was a monument, a boundary marker, or something far more esoteric. Because there's more. In the 1970s, During an especially brutal drought, aerial photography revealed something hidden beneath the waterline, a pattern. Circles, faint, crumbling stone outlines arranged around the base of the obelisk, like ripples frozen in time. They might have once been platforms, or altars, or perhaps procession paths. But the strangest part, they lead nowhere, just rings fading into the reeds. Some archaeologists believe the stone was part of a forgotten Sumerian cult center, a temple to a sky god whose name has long since dissolved into dust. But if that were true, where are the cuneiform tablets? Where are the ziggurats? Where are the clay bricks? The telltale pottery shards? The burnt bones? There's nothing here. No ruins. No roads. No names. Only the stone. Some say it was a marker for something older, maybe even pre-Sumerian. A relic left by a culture we haven't yet identified. One theory places it during the Ubaid period over 7,000 years ago. But that's just a guess. The stone refuses to cooperate with dating methods. And then there's the way it makes people feel. Locals avoid the area. They call it Ibn Tal, or Son of the Mound. Not out of reverence, but wariness. Some say it hums at night. A low, vibrating tone you don't hear so much as feel in your chest. One farmer claimed his compass spun in circles when he got too close. Another said his dog refused to step near the base, whining until they turned around. Legends speak of the sky needle, a tool dropped by the gods to measure the earth. Some say it anchors the heavens. Others believe it's the remnant of something that fell from the sky. Myth, probably, but here the line between myth and memory is thin. Modern scans have revealed more unsettling features. Subsurface mapping shows radial lines, sunken trenches fanning out from the base like spokes. Not erosion, not animal trails, but something carved, patterned. One segment even leads to a series of shallow pits that, when plotted on a map, form a perfect spiral. That spiral aligns oddly with the path of certain stars in the sky, not current ones, but ancient ones visible in Mesopotamian skies thousands of years ago. Historians still debate whether these alignments are intentional or coincidence, but even coincidence starts to sweat when you add up too many of them. So, what is it? A temple? A timekeeper? A forgotten calendar? An observatory for gods that needed no telescope? Or something more symbolic? Some scholars argue that ancient humans didn't always build things to use, not the way we think of function. Some structures were built to remind, others to mark, some perhaps to be seen only once a year, and some were never meant for us at all. The obelisk has no inscriptions, no dedication, no explanation, just presence. It doesn't care if you understand it. It doesn't explain itself. It just stands, watching. At dawn, it catches fire in sunlight, then fades back into the gray. At night, it looms above the swamp, like the memory of a dream you can't quite name. And when you leave, when your boots squish back through the reeds and the frogs start to sing again, you still feel it. Not behind you, beneath you, watching. Not with eyes, not with judgment. Just there, as if the earth needed to be measured once, long ago. And this was the mark. Whatever purpose it once served is gone now. Eroded, forgotten, or maybe fulfilled. But it remains, and the swamp remembers. You arrive by boat, gliding through the pale mist of a Norwegian fjord. The water is calm, so calm it reflects the sky like a mirror. Gulls cry overhead, the cliffs rise like granite teeth, and the air tastes of salt and stone. Then you see it, Mørkvik, a small curve in the coastline, a bay with no harbor, no signs, just two stone pillars poking through the mossy hillside. They're not dramatic, not at first, but they're cut too cleanly to be natural, too straight, too proud, like the remnants of a forgotten gate. You step ashore, your boots, landing on something that feels wrong. Not wrong like a trap, wrong like a secret that's tired of being quiet. Under the moss and seaweed, the ground is paved. Cobblestones. Not modern, ancient. Their edges worn smooth by centuries of rain and time. You follow them inland and discover what shouldn't be here walls. Massive dry-fitted stone walls rising in tiers like a ziggurat. Each layer stacked without mortar, just friction and gravity. They're angled not for fortification, but alignment to something in the sky. This is not a Viking ring fort. There are no longhouses, no runestones, no fire pits, no iron tools. It's something else entirely. Welcome to Skugaholm Shadow Isle. That's what the locals call it in whispers. Not because of a legend, not because of sagas, just a feeling, a knowing. No records mention this place. No sagas sing of it. No king ever claimed it. And yet it stands. As you climb higher, the walls narrow, guiding you toward a central platform at the fortress's peak. It's roofless now, but the three surrounding slabs are polished, smooth, perfect rectangles cut with alarming precision. The space is cold still. It feels more like a tomb than a lookout. But there are no bones here, no altars, just a view, and what a view it is. To the north mountains, to the south sea, but to the west, perfect alignment with the horizon. And that's when you remember what the archaeologists discovered. Once a year at the autumn equinox, the northern lights appear directly above this chamber, not nearby, exactly above. Green curtains of solar wind flutter like spirits across the night sky, lining up with this stone corridor as if summoned. Coincidence not likely. Historians still debate whether this was intentional or miraculous. But here's the thing, you can't accidentally align architecture to auroras. They're unpredictable, unruly. But someone here somehow measured the sky and built accordingly. And that's not all. Inside the lower chambers, tucked into the cold and mossy recesses, researchers found stone bowls, each one containing trace amounts of red pigment iron oxide. No DNA, no animal remains, just color. Intentionally placed, preserved. Some say the pigment was symbolic. Others suspect ritual use. Perhaps body paint, perhaps something deeper. Bloodless sacrifice, a marking of self rather than others. Further in, there's a corridor half buried under layers of drift and pine roots. At its end lies a small platform with strange carvings, compass points etched into the stone. But not the modern north. The magnetic north as it would have been centuries ago. Someone here understood geomagnetism long before compasses were common. Grooves spiral out from the platform like spokes on a wheel. Some geologists claim it's erosion. Others are less certain. The lines are too clean, too deliberate. They radiate from the center like a map or a calendar. Historians still debate whether this site was military, ceremonial, or astronomical. But the deeper you walk into the fortress, the clearer it becomes. This was never meant for war. There are no weapons, no defenses, no signs of occupation, no hearths, no smoke stains, no iron nails or charred wood. This place wasn't built to house people. It was built to house moments. Some suggest it was a sanctuary, a pilgrimage site for those who followed the sky, a sacred space where auroras were not just light shows, but messages, symbols, conversations. There's precedent. Across Scandinavia, Neolithic spirals and wave motifs echo what's found here. In rock shelters, on cliff faces, repeated, persistent. A language made of pattern, not words. No writing has ever been found here. No names, just echoes. When the glaciers receded and sea levels rose, the base of the fortress was swallowed. Mörkvik became an island, briefly, then a peninsula. The passage of time turned it from a place of power into a place of silence, and yet the alignment still works. Every equinox, the aurora finds its place in the sky, and the fortress rises in silence beneath it. Even modern astronomers struggle to explain the precision, the timing, the symmetry. Some believe it's chance. Others think it's proof of a lost understanding, an ancient system for watching the sky, not with telescopes, but with stone. And then there's the mystery of its construction. The stonework doesn't match Roman style. It predates Viking techniques. No local tradition claims it. It simply exists without introduction, without sequel, which leads to a theory that's less popular, but quietly persistent. Maybe this wasn't meant for us at all. Maybe it was built by a people who didn't settle, who didn't carve their names into every rock, who measured time in light, not lineage. A people who watched the sky, saw its rhythms, and built a monument not to kings or gods, but to attention. To being present in the moment, the world whispers its secrets. You sit at the highest point, your back against cold stone. The sky darkens, and then curtain. The aurora flickers to life, green flames dancing across the sky. You gasp, but the stone beneath you doesn't. It just watches. The fortress was waiting. It always was. You realize something just then. This isn't a ruin. It's a rehearsal. A place that performs one song a year perfectly quietly. A song of stars and silence. And tonight, you've been invited to listen. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, where the sun filters through a ceiling of tangled leaves and vines, there's a hillside that whispers of water but never flows. You push through undergrowth, slick with dew. Mosquitoes circle like orbiting drones. Somewhere nearby, a howler monkey groans like a waking giant. And then unexpectedly, you find it not a temple, not a ruin, but lines carved directly into the rock descending the slope like forgotten veins. Stone channels, wide, deep, too straight to be natural. They hug the hill with geometric grace, split at odd junctions, and then join again at circular basins carved into the bedrock basins that resemble stepped wells, but with no ladders. No signs of water erosion, no algae, no water. Not now, not ever. The aqueduct stretches more than a kilometer, twisting gently with the landscape. Its beautifully crafted stone walls precise and level. The whole system seems designed to carry water, and yet it has never done so. Not even once. Scientists confirmed it. Tracer dyes poured into the channels, vanished into cracks. Soil analysis showed no trace of moisture history. Microbial samples in the basins, bone dry. No spores, no algae, no biofilm. This isn't a broken system. It's an untouched one. You crouch near one of the larger basins. It's silent except for the forest around you. Birds calling insects, clicking leaves trembling in the breeze. You place your palm on the stone. It's cool, dry, as if it has always been waiting for something that never came. Historians still debate whether this was a failed project, a forgotten engineering trial, or something entirely different. One theory gaining traction among archaeologists and spiritual historians is that this aqueduct was never meant to carry water. It was meant to invite it. A ritual structure, a symbolic conduit. In some cultures, water is sacred, not just as life giver, but as listener. To carve a path through the earth for it was an act of devotion, not necessity. And in this case, the act may have been the entire point. Some locals call it la piedra que canta, the singing stone. Not because it sings to the ears, but because under the right conditions it hums. Researchers brought in resonance equipment. They struck the channels gently with wooden mallets and found that at specific intervals, the stone vibrated at low frequencies, deep enough to be felt more than heard. Like a throat clearing, like the memory of a voice. Could it have been a ceremonial path? Not for walking or farming, but for sound, for ritual. One theory posits that this was a space for dream sharing, a practice in which elders carved channels into stone during trance ceremonies, chanting as they worked, shaping reality through repetition. There's precedent for that in Amazonian culture. Oral memory passed through sound, not script. Geometry as devotion. Historians still debate whether this interpretation gives too much credit to lost societies. But what else explains the alignment? Because here's the strangest part, the entire system is aligned to the June solstice. On that day at dawn, the rising sun strikes the topmost basin and sends a line of golden light cascading down the channels, illuminating each one for just a few seconds before moving on. And at winter solstice, the light falls vertically into the deepest basin dead center. Like a spotlight. That's not coincidence. That's intention. This isn't plumbing. It's performance. Some believe the stepped basins were symbolic of rebirth or cosmic descent. Others suggest the whole thing might be an astronomical instrument, a calendar that tracks light and shadow instead of numbers. As you move further down the hill, you find petroglyphs, carvings in the rock spirals, snakes' hands pushing outward. Some resemble those found in Central America. Others feel Andean. None match known Amazonian motifs. It's as if the builders here were drawing on multiple traditions. Or maybe they were the originators. Maybe the echoes we find across the continent started here and then spread outward like ripples from a stone dropped in time. But if this place was so important, where are the homes, the fires, the artifacts? That's the thing. There's nothing. No settlement. No broken pots. No hearths. No trash pits. Just the aqueduct. And silence. Some say it was a prototype, a training ground for builders before they moved on to greater projects. But no other systems like this exist nearby. This is not one of many. It's one of one. Others suggest it was a spiritual interface, a place to commune not with water, but with its absence. A design meant to honor a promise that the water would come when the people were ready, but the water never came. Or maybe it did just once and then left. Maybe the ritual worked. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be permanent. The jungle has its own theories. Vines have returned, curling around the stone like muscle memory. Roots creep into seams. But still, the geometry holds. The channels haven't collapsed. The angles remain crisp. This structure was meant to endure. You reach the final basin. It's deeper than the rest, cut with extra care. At noon, the sun falls directly into it. A beam of light, clean and straight, hits the center stone and lingers, and when it does, the forest goes quiet. The birds stop. The breeze pauses, and for a few seconds, everything hums. You can feel it in your chest, in your teeth, in your ribs. Then it passes. The light shifts. The jungle exhales. No water, no sound, no voice, just stone. Historians still debate whether this place was a failure of engineering or a masterpiece of faith. Maybe the people who built it didn't want to carry water. Maybe they wanted to carry silence. Maybe they carved a path not for liquid, but for light. Not for farming, but for memory. And now, as you stand in the final basin, hands resting on stone carved 1,000 years ago, you realize some monuments don't speak in language. They speak in absence, in pattern, in stillness. This aqueduct never flowed, but maybe it was never meant to. It doesn't look like much from a distance. Just another sun-drenched hill in southern India, baked golden by centuries of dry heat and time. No signs, no flags, no temples perched dramatically on top. But as you climb step by careful step over brittle grass and warm rock, something begins to shift. The hill flattens slightly. The breeze slows. And then you see it, a pyramid. Not massive, not towering like Giza. But it's there shaped, aligned, and completely alone. Four sides smooth, rising at a gentle angle to a perfectly flat summit. No stairs, no carvings, no deity perched at the top. Just warm, sunlit sandstone that practically glows under the late afternoon sky. Locals call it Shilagiri Stone Hill. But no one claims it. No festivals are held here. No gods are honored. It sits in silence, nameless and uncelebrated, watching the horizon. The first time archaeologists surveyed this site, they assumed it was a natural formation, a happy coincidence of erosion and time. But then they started measuring. Each face of the pyramid tilts at precisely 52 degrees, remarkably close to the slope of the Great Pyramid of Khufu. Each corner aligns cardinally north, southeast, west, with a precision difficult to pull off even today without instruments. And then came the materials. The stone isn't local. The bright polished sandstone was quarried miles away, dragged or carried uphill during an era with no wheels, no roads, and no visible infrastructure. There are no sledge tracks, no chisel marks, no tool debris. It's as if the stones simply arrived. Historians still debate whether Shilagiri is man-made or a modified natural formation. But even if the base was natural, there's no doubt it was reshaped with human hands. So then, who built it and why? That's where the mystery thickens. Because unlike most Indian pyramidal temples, there are no signs of worship, no iconography, no niches, no statues, not even traces of incense or offerings. It's just a pyramid, pure geometry. The summit is bare, except for a few shallow grooves cut into the flat stone. Too thin to be accidental, too deliberate to ignore. When the sun reaches its highest point at noon during the summer solstice, it casts a cross of light and shadow over the top. Perfect vertical and horizontal alignment, like a compass, like a clock. Historians still debate whether this was a ritual site, an observatory, or something else entirely. One theory suggests Shilagiri was an astronomical marker, a structure designed not to house gods, but to watch them. To measure the sky, not to pray beneath it. The grooves may have been part of a light tracking system. During specific seasons, narrow beams of light pass through cracks between stones, highlighting different grooves, like a sundial carved into the bones of the earth. But that's not the only strange feature. When researchers examined the stone under ultraviolet light, they noticed something odd. Faint patches on the face of the pyramid began to glow, not brightly, not dramatically, but unmistakably. The sandstone emits a soft, almost ghostly luminescence in certain spots, particularly near the apex. Tests revealed trace elements of rare earth minerals embedded in the stone materials that fluoresce under certain conditions and were not typically found in Indian construction from the presumed time period. So the builders either stumbled onto a unique quarry or deliberately sourced glowing rock. Why? Perhaps it was ceremonial. Perhaps the pyramid was meant to shine not by day, but by dusk. Imagine this, a stone mountain glowing faintly under moonlight. Not bright enough to scare, just enough to be seen. A beacon not to guide the living, but to remind the watching sky that someone once understood. One more mystery. In 2021, a team drilled near the base of the pyramid to test the foundation depth. After only 6 inches, the bit struck something hard. Not stone, not earth, metal, rusty pitted and resistant, 6 centimeters thick. A plate of steel buried beneath sandstone that predates ironworking in the region by centuries. Not part of the original construction, but someone long after the pyramid was built buried something under it or sealed something in. Attempts to remove the plate failed. Conservation groups stepped in and halted the dig. Officially, no one knows what lies beneath it. Unofficially, theories bloom like weeds. A time capsule, a buried relic, a secret foundation to some older structure the pyramid was built atop. Whatever it is, it stays hidden. The land offers no more clues. Around the pyramid, researchers found ancient pollen species of trees that no longer grow in the region. This place once supported a forest long since vanished. The area may have once been sacred ground, an axis between the underworld and the stars. That theory gains weight when you visit the caves beneath. Yes, beneath. Lower on the hill. Limestone caves cut through the rock. Within them, faint rock art spirals, sun motifs, serpent patterns. The same geometric themes found in the grooves atop the pyramid. Was this a vertical, ritual site? A place where underworld and sky connected, where rites began in darkness and ended in light. Historians still debate whether the pyramid and caves are related, but proximity and pattern suggest yes. It makes you wonder, what kind of civilization puts this much effort into a structure, uses it maybe once or twice, and then abandons it? Some think it was built for a single event, a ceremony marking the end of an era, a celestial alignment that came and went, a goodbye in stone. Others believe it was too sacred to reuse, tainted by success or failure. Today, the villagers walk around it, not out of fear, but respect. It is simply there, too perfect to touch, too old to claim. You climb to the top at twilight. The sun dips behind the western ridge. The stone cools beneath your palms, and then it happens. The apex glows, just barely, like a single star catching its breath. You stay until it fades, until the air grows still, and as you walk back down the hill, one thought lingers. This wasn't built to be worshipped. It was built to be remembered, and maybe, just maybe, to remember you back. You climb for hours through the misty green of the Yunnan Highlands in southwest China, where the clouds cling low and the trees lean in like they're listening. There's no road, just a goat path that disappears more than once. You follow what feels more like a rumor than a trail passed down through whispers from locals who don't like to talk about it too much. Eventually, the forest opens into a clearing, and there it is, stone, circular, vast, a theater carved directly into the side of the mountain with no signs, no guards, no fanfare, no explanation. Just wide, quiet seating rows cut in near-perfect arcs, all focused on a flat central platform, a stage with no performer. At first, you think it might be a Buddhist monastery ruin or a lost temple. But then you realize there are no symbols, no statues, no shrines, no place for gods or monks or incense, just stone, pure functional geometry. And then you speak, just a whisper, and your voice carries, not a little, not in that faint echo way you expect in old places. No, your words bounce with eerie precision to every seat in the hollowed circle. It's like someone built the entire thing with a soundboard in mind, like the mountain itself was tuned. Historians still debate whether the structure was a performance space, a ceremonial site, or something else entirely. But acousticians have confirmed this much. It works better than most modern concert halls. It's not just about sound. It's about sound's intention. The geometry of the place creates what engineers call acoustic preservation. A sound made at the center doesn't just echo, it lingers. It amplifies the frequencies most associated with the human voice. And it fades at the perfect rate to be soothing, not jarring. It's not just architecture, it's a resonance engine. But here's the part that makes your spine tighten. The seats don't seem built for humans. They're too wide, too deep, angled strangely so that when you sit, your posture isn't upright. It's reclined, almost like you're meant to be observing, not participating. Or perhaps experiencing something inward. There's no sign anyone ever lived nearby. No ruins of dwellings. No remnants of infrastructure to support a population large enough to fill this theater. No roads. No tools. Just this strange, perfect space cut into a lonely mountain built to carry voices to beings that may never have spoken. One theory suggests it was never meant for performance at all. Instead, it was a ritual amplifier, a space where specific chants or tones could be projected into the landscape, not for people, but for the land itself. Think about that. A theater built not to hear you, but to let you be heard by something older. Some cultures believed mountains had spirits that stone remembered, that if you could strike the right note, the world would answer back. And there's more. A team of researchers once ran long-form resonance scans across the structure. Deep, low-frequency pulses, the kind designed to mimic the ancient drums of nomadic tribes. And at certain frequencies, something happened. The air shifted. The sound didn't just echo. It moved. It crawled. It folded in on itself. One physicist described it like sound rolling uphill. Not metaphysically, physically. The sound was climbing the structure, defying gravity in subtle, measurable ways. The locals weren't surprised. They've always called it the theater of the blind eye. Why? Because there are no carvings, no images, no eyes painted on the walls, and no stories about who watched what here. Only that it listens. They say the mountain built it, that the stones ask to be shaped, that the place hears things it was never meant to repeat. There's no proof of any of that. But then again, there's no proof of anything else either. And just when you think it's all speculation, you stumble across the tunnel. Half hidden behind overgrowth, a narrow corridor extends from behind the stage. It's carved in tight angles, not curved like the main space. The walls are unadorned but smooth. At the far end, there's a chamber. It holds 5 stones, round, flat, arranged in a star pattern. Each has a depression in the center like a bowl. Some contain traces of ash. One holds a black resin, hardened into a strange swirl. No writing, no bones, no relics, just quiet. Historians still debate whether this back chamber was a preparation space, a ritual site, or something more experimental. One acoustician proposed it was an oscillation chamber designed to generate standing waves that would resonate across the main theater when charged with sound. If true, that would require a sophisticated knowledge of acoustics far beyond what we attribute to ancient mountain cultures. But perhaps the most disorienting theory is the one no one wants to say out loud, that the theater was not for us, that it was a communication device, a place to transmit rather than receive, not to gods, not to spirits, but to something real, something measurable, something that once listened from the sky or under the earth. It's just a theory, but when you sit in the center of that stone stage and whisper your name and hear it fly softly perfectly to the furthest edge of the chamber and back, you can't help but feel watched, not by a person, not by a god, by the memory of something old enough to have forgotten us and still waiting to be remembered. And when you leave, stepping quietly back into the fog, letting the forest swallow the clearing, you'll notice something. The birds are louder, the wind is softer, and your footsteps, they echo longer than they should, as if your voice hasn't really left, as if it's still speaking in stone. You find it by accident because that's the only way you can find it. There's no marker, no sign pointing toward anything interesting. Just a quiet split in a dusty trail in central Tanzania, near a modest trading post, where a few women sell maize meal under a sagging tarp. But if you turn down the wrong path, well, the wrong path, you'll see it. A road, paved, wide, clean, and going absolutely nowhere. It starts without fanfare. A sharp transition from dirt to something suspiciously modern, the kind of surface that wouldn't be out of place on a European highway. Macadam layered with laterite carefully edged with curbstones, a strange overachievement for an area where most roads are gravel at best. You step onto it and the world changes. The brush recedes. The air feels oddly still. This road doesn't belong here. It stretches out in a dead straight line across the savanna, mile after mile of deliberate purposeful engineering. No curves, no intersections, and after about 80 kilometers, 50 miles, it simply ends. No city, no factory, no airstrip, just bush and silence. They call it the Bali Road from the Swahili word Bali, meaning elsewhere. As in, it doesn't go here. It goes somewhere else, except it doesn't. Historians still debate whether the Bali Road was part of a defunct infrastructure project, a secret military operation, or something stranger. But no answer fits all the facts. There are no government records before the 1980s that mention it. No colonial maps show it. Aerial surveys from the 1960s and 70s, back when Tanzania was newly independent and every piece of infrastructure was documented meticulously, show nothing. It's like the road appeared overnight. Built, finished, abandoned. Some say it was meant to serve a mine uranium maybe, but there are no shafts, no pits, no tailings, no equipment. Others whisper about a Cold War-era outpost, a logistics corridor to nowhere, maybe even a hidden airfield. But here's the thing. The road is too good. Engineers who studied its grade found it unusually smooth, not just for this part of Africa, but for anywhere. It's designed for weight, for heavy transport, and then nothing. You walk along it, and every kilometer you find a stone pillar about shoulder height, weathered and unmarked. They appear with unnerving consistency, like a countdown, or a warning, or a map. And just before the pavement ends, there's a rusted bridge. It spans a shallow ravine dry in summer, barely a stream in winter. The bridge is built with industrial-grade steel. No stamps, no factory insignias, nothing to prove who made it. Just a faded splash of red paint with the characters TAR 75. Tanzania maybe. TAR line could be. Limringteen 75. Possibly. Historians still debate whether this date marks the road's construction or something else entirely. Beyond the bridge, the pavement abruptly dissolves into red dust, as if whoever built it simply stopped, packed up their machines, erased their footprints, and left. Researchers drilled core samples along the length of the road. Beneath it, voids, buried pipes, manhole covers that lead nowhere. Some channels curve down deep down toward nothing. One even ends beneath a slab of concrete twice as thick as the others, with embedded metal tags labeled KM45 and E31. There's no known Tanzanian or regional road numbering system that uses this format. So, what does it mean? Some believe the road was a test bed, a prototype for future national highways. But test roads don't span 50 miles. They don't have kilometer markers and bridges. They certainly don't include subterranean drainage systems for traffic that never came. You sit on one of the mile markers. The stone is warm. The air is still. You can hear insects ticking in the underbrush. And then you notice something else. There are no settlements along this road. No villages, no crossroads, no shops, nothing. Even animals avoid it. Birds don't roost on the poles. Hyenas steer clear. It's like the land forgot how to touch it. Some theorists suggest something more abstract, that the Bali Road wasn't built to reach anything. It was built to leave something behind. A ritual of distance. A project not of arrival, but of removal. A way to draw a line into the wilderness and say, we were here, but not anymore. Others suggest it's a memory road, a leftover from a time and project that were erased on purpose. A failed city, a covered scandal, a civilization swallowed before it had the chance to breathe. Historians still debate whether this was mere oversight or something deeper, but the mystery only deepens with time. Each year, the road fades a little more. Bush creeps in. Cracks spread. Nature reclaims it. But still, the pavement holds. The markings remain. The pillars stand. And if you walk it at night under a sky too large and too quiet, you'll feel it. That strange humming absence. A road with no destination. A message written in stone for no one. When you reach the end, where the pavement crumbles and the red dust returns, you look back. And that's when it hits you. The road wasn't built for going forward. It was built for turning around. There's no roof, no altar, no statue of a god staring back at you from the end of the nave. But the walls stare at you, hundreds of them, carved from clay, all eyes. This is the temple with no name, no shrine, no gods, no offerings, Just rows and rows of terracotta eyes built into the walls, lintels, doorways everywhere. Some are wide and round, others almond-shaped, downcast, narrowed in solemn vigil. Some blink in mid-carve, some weep. This is the Temple of No Gods, found on a high plateau in West Africa, where red earth bleeds into dry wind, and the horizon stretches like the beginning of a forgotten dream. The locals call it Tempo Silencio, the Temple of Silence. Not because it's quiet, though it is, but because it refuses to speak. No inscriptions, no language, just these eyes watching, always watching. You walk among them. Each step crunches over cracked terracotta. The air is dry enough to sting. The floor plan reveals a kind of symmetry, a ring of rooms around a central oval. But there's no altar, no raised dais. Just more eyes, facing inward, facing each other, facing you. It's unnerving. Historians still debate whether this site was religious judicial or entirely symbolic. Carbon dating places it around 1200 CE, well within the timeline of several West African kingdoms. But here's the twist: none of them claim it. No oral tradition, no king lists, no territorial history connects to this temple. It's like it built itself out of memory and shame. One theory suggests it was a watch temple, not for worship, but for reminder. The eyes may represent a society based on mutual observation, a sacred place of confession, where judgment didn't come from a god, but from the collective gaze of the community. Not justice from above, justice from within. That idea gains weight when you look closer. Some of the eyes are stylized, geometric, nearly abstract. Others are hauntingly realistic, too detailed to be generic. They seem personal, like likenesses of real people once carved to preserve a presence, maybe even preserve memory. One section of the wall contains a ring of broken eyes, shattered deliberately. Their shards lie in a neat circle at the base. Archaeologists believe this was intentional, a ritual break, perhaps a symbol of release or exile. Perhaps those eyes had seen enough. In one of the deepest rooms, a trench unearthed something more startling: clay bowls, still intact, containing residues of ground pigment and herbs. Analysis showed trace amounts of manganese and gold dust. Not enough for value, just enough for symbolism. Why would a society that built with clay use gold dust in pigment? Because it wasn't about wealth, it was about presence. Gold in dust form can shimmer under firelight, the kind of shimmer that mimics eyes. If this temple was lit from within torches, flickering in every corridor, then the eyes wouldn't just look back. They would glow. Historians still debate whether this was meant as spiritual surveillance or societal performance. But either way, you can feel it. This place isn't abandoned. It's just waiting. You move toward the inner ring, a corridor wrapped in more eyes, every single one carved at the same level. Head height, as if you're being examined, judged, welcomed, or all three. There are no religious symbols, no masks, no tribal identifiers. This is not a temple built to house a god. It's a temple built to see. One anthropologist suggested the site may have been part of a forgotten egalitarian system, a form of governance without a leader, where decisions were made communally under the watch of symbolic eyes. Think of it as the earliest surveillance state, but sacred, ritualized, voluntary. Others argue that the temple's silence speaks of trauma, a place built not to worship, but to process, to bear witness, That idea surfaces again in the structure's acoustic profile. In 2018, a team ran sound tests. The central oval chamber has a deep, sustained resonance that amplifies even a whisper, not an echo. A hum. The kind that lingers under your ribs. The kind you feel more than hear. One researcher likened it to the experience of standing inside a speaker. A local elder, when invited to visit the site, said only, "This is not a temple. This is where people went when their voices were too heavy." No one asked him to explain. And then there's the speed at which it was built. For a structure this complex, with walls several meters high, the construction must have been fast. The clay shows signs of rapid shaping using straw and palm fibers for strength, as if speed was more important than durability. Why rush? Were they fleeing something? Trying to record something before it was lost? Maybe the temple wasn't built for ritual. Maybe it was built for memory. One final oddity. In a shallow alcove behind the far wall, archaeologists found a stone slab, completely unlike the rest of the structure. Imported, likely traded from hundreds of miles away. On it, a single symbol, an unblinking eye with lines radiating outward. Not stylized, not sacred, just watching. The slab was embedded upside down, deliberately, as if at the very end someone tried to hide the last watcher, or blind it, and then they left. No bodies were found. No fire damage. No signs of war or siege. Just the weather, the wind, and the eyes holding their gaze against time. You step outside the temple into the ochre heat of the plateau. The breeze carries dust. Nothing moves, and yet you feel seen, not in the paranoid sense, not like surveillance, but like memory. Deep collective silent memory. This is not a temple of gods. It's a temple of us, built to hold what we could no longer carry, what we couldn't say out loud, built to see, built to remember, and maybe someday to forgive. The wind off the South China Sea smells of salt and mud as it moves inland, threading its way between rice paddies and mangrove swamps. The terrain flattens here, low green, waterlogged. Fishermen cast nets. Children ride rusted bicycles along narrow dikes. It feels timeless, but just beyond the edges of cultivation, hidden beneath the shallow grasses and soft reeds, is a city. Not one with towers or gates. Not one with signs or stories. Just stone outlines, grids beneath the ground. Roads that stop mid-bend. Squares with no monuments. House foundations resting beneath your feet, quiet and unassuming. And not a single bone. Not one. Not even a sliver of one. This is Thon Thon, the city that left no bones. Satellite scans first spotted it, strange geometries visible just beneath the topsoil. Archaeologists came expecting ancient rice terraces. What they found instead were the footprints of a lost urban space. 8 hectares of planned streets, rectangular homes, wells courtyards, and communal spaces. Everything you'd expect from a vibrant living city, except for the living, and more troubling, the dead. Historians still debate whether this was a full-scale city or a temporary outpost. But the evidence of life is clear. Farm tools were uncovered. Hearths. Rice husks in long, narrow granaries. Water channels designed to redirect floodwaters with an engineer's precision. The people who lived here understood their environment. They built for it, thrived in it. But then they left and took their dead with them, which is highly unusual. In Southeast Asia, burial traditions are deeply rooted. Communities inter their loved ones in marked cemeteries. Cremations leave telltale remains. Even nomadic groups leave signs. Ash pits, burnt offerings, fragmentary tools buried with the departed. But here nothing, not under the houses, not beyond the borders. Teams searched 20 kilometers in all directions. Soil samples were tested for calcium traces. Ground-penetrating radar scanned for mass graves or tombs. All negative. It's as if the people of Thon erased themselves with precision, or never died at all. One possible explanation is climate. Maybe the coastline shifted. Rising seas forced the people inland. But if so, why leave no trace? Why seal doorways with neat piles of stones as if intentionally closing a chapter? And yes, that's another thing. The doors. Many homes in Thon were deliberately sealed. Flat stones laid carefully over entrances, not collapsed or buried sealed. Kitchens still had pots on the bench. Tools were left neatly on racks. There was no sign of panic, no evidence of looting. It wasn't a rush. It was a choice. Some archaeologists believe this was a ritual abandonment, a communal decision to leave the place behind completely. But that still doesn't explain the animal burials. Scattered around the edges of the settlement, they found shallow pits, each containing a domesticated animal, carefully placed and buried with small ceramic dishes, flour remnants, and shells. Dogs, pigs, one young water buffalo. These were not food remains. They were offerings, farewells, and they happened just before the human habitation stops. So, what does that mean? Were these sacrifices to bless a journey, to protect those leaving, to appease something they feared? Historians still debate whether this was a response to disaster drought or something less tangible like a spiritual awakening, because there's something else. In the center of the settlement lies a shallow pool stone lined and precisely leveled. No pipes, no drains, no steps, just a quiet basin filled with water and lotus petals. Dozens of small clay bowls, many cracked by time, rest at the bottom. No inscriptions, no idols, no incense, just water and light. Ritual cleansing, a farewell. Whatever it was, the symbolism is potent water as a threshold, as forgetting, as crossing. One anthropologist described it as a baptism in reverse, a washing away of belonging, of identity, of history. And then there's the local story. Among nearby villages, elders still speak of a white light that appeared in the sky one night long ago, a burning star that hung over the swamp, humming like a hive. When it vanished, the city was empty. A comet A meteor, maybe, but geological cores pulled from the surrounding swamp reveal a thin layer of ash and disturbed sediment dating to around 1100 CE, the same window in which the city disappears from the record. Evidence of a possible offshore eruption, a silent tsunami. It could have driven them inland. But then again, if they had survived, if they had fled, they would have buried their dead somewhere. And still, nothing, unless that wasn't how they saw death. One theory, radical but growing, is that Thon was not a traditional city at all, but a kind of ritual station, a temporary community of pilgrims or monks who lived with the belief that no one dies in one place, that when the time came, the body must move, the soul must journey. Death, like life, must be nomadic. It's speculative, but some ancient Southeast Asian practices did involve scattering cremated ashes over rivers under trees or into wind currents. If taken to the extreme, it might explain the utter absence. But there's something more unsettling. Soil DNA analysis of the city revealed high human activity, but mostly outside of the structures. It's as if people lived communally, not privately. And that suggests a different kind of culture, one less concerned with ownership, more focused on shared space, shared memory, shared departure. You stand in the central square, the grass waving softly in the breeze. The pool still catches light. The outlines of homes ripple beneath your feet. Everything says, we were here. Everything says, we left together, and not in fear, but in purpose. So maybe they didn't forget to bury their dead. Maybe they carried them. Maybe the people of Thon Thon walked away as one hands holding children, shoulders bearing urns, hearts heavy with memory, and disappeared into the interior where no map could follow. And maybe they never intended to be found, only remembered by silence, by absence. By the way, the city still stands, quietly insisting we lived, we loved, we left. You have to fly over it first. That's the only way you'd even know it exists, because from the forest floor, it's just another hill covered in dense green tangled vines and the constant hum of insects. But from the air, when the sun hits just right and the trees thin, slightly a perfect geometric shadow emerges. A pyramid, not of dirt or crumbled stone, but granite, impossibly smooth, impossibly intact, tucked deep within the Colombian Amazon, where no roads lead, and the air itself feels ancient, sits what some now call El Montículo de Piedra, the stone mound. It's small, compared to the giants of Egypt or Mesoamerica, only 15 feet tall, with a square base perhaps 45 feet across. But its perfection is unnerving. Each block is a clean, six-faced piece of granite. No mortar, no erosion, no collapse. It looks recent, but it's not. When a ground team finally cut their way in, after a weeks-long expedition through wet jungle and mosquito-thick air, they expected a crumbling ruin, maybe a misidentified rock formation. Instead, they found precision. Historians still debate whether the structure is the remnant of a larger complex or an isolated construct. But what's clear is that this pyramid was placed. The granite used to build it doesn't exist nearby. The nearest natural deposits are miles away across thick rainforest with no river access. And these blocks aren't small. Some weigh more than a ton. No tool marks. No scaffolding debris. No surrounding village or quarry. Just the pyramid, assembled like a 3D puzzle with surgical care. You run your hand along one of the corner blocks. It's cold to the touch. Even in the oppressive heat, the stone feels untouched by sun. You try slipping a blade between the seams. Nothing. The joints are so tight the pyramid seems to hum with internal pressure, like it's holding something in. There are no doors, no inscriptions, no stairs, no hidden chambers. Just a flat top, perfectly level, aligned to the cardinal directions with laser-like accuracy. And here's where it gets stranger. The base of the pyramid is slightly tilted just a few degrees off horizontal, but each ascending layer corrects the tilt, so that by the time you reach the apex, the top is flawlessly flat. That means the builders not only knew the terrain, they compensated for it. Intentionally. That's not art. That's engineering. Historians still debate whether the builders were a known Amazonian tribe or a lost culture that predated them. But the methods don't match anything in the region. In the Andes stonework like this exists in Cusco, in Sacsayhuaman, in the high cities of the Inca. But those civilizations didn't reach this deep into the jungle. And this structure doesn't match their style anyway. No trapezoids, no interlocking zigzags, just square precision like a mathematical thought etched in stone. No one knows what it was for, but it reacts to the world. During the rainy season, the water cascades off the pyramid through 12 small notches, each at the base of a block along its edges. They channel rainwater down in evenly spaced rivulets. No splashing, no pooling. It's self-cleaning. And then there's the sound. When you stand on top and stomp your foot just once the jungle hushes, a dull bass note reverberates downward as if the pyramid were hollow. But ground scans say otherwise. It's solid, no cavity, just that resonance. One researcher called it the heartbeat of the stone. Some believe it's an accident. Others, particularly acoustical engineers, think the pyramid was tuned not to play music, to respond to it. They brought in sound instruments, broadcasting controlled frequencies. At certain pitches, the pyramid vibrated. The team described it as a low-frequency collector, as if the stone itself was built to absorb sound and maybe remember it. But remember it for what? The local tribes don't claim the structure. In fact, most avoid it. They say the animals won't nest near it, that the birds fall quiet in its presence. One elder claimed the place listens when you don't speak. And though no active legends remain, they treat the mound with an odd mix of respect and dismissal, as if it belongs to a story too old to retell. Some speculate the pyramid was part of a network, a signal point for something broader, perhaps aligned with celestial events, perhaps not, but no one can explain what it meant. It has no iconography, no human touch beyond its creation, no cultural marker, no offering pit, no sign of use. It is simply there, timeless, unyielding, as if it were waiting. One archaeologist, standing at the summit during a rare dry season sunset, reported something peculiar. For just a moment, as the sun dipped low, the shadows around the pyramid shifted. The jungle went quiet. The light hit the western face just so, and a faint glow shimmered across the top, not reflected, not bright, just present, like something beneath the surface breathing through granite. Tests later confirmed trace elements of magnetite and quartz in the stone minerals known to respond subtly to electromagnetic fluctuations. No one can say if the effect is intentional or incidental, but it lingers. You stand there now, at the top of the pyramid, surrounded by a green sea that stretches in every direction, broken only by the faint song of cicadas. And for a moment, the weight of it all presses in. This isn't just a ruin. It's an idea, not built for utility, not built for comfort, built to be, to mark something, to mean something. And maybe that meaning isn't for us. Maybe it never was. You sit legs folded, palms resting on the smooth summit stone. You close your eyes and feel the hum, like thunder just beneath thought, like memory too old to name. A pyramid, small and perfect in the middle of nowhere, saying nothing, but not silent. Never silent. You shouldn't find a shipyard in the desert. But that's exactly what this is, or appears to be. Deep in Jordan's Wadi Rum, where sandstone cliffs rise like the frozen backs of ancient leviathans, and where wind sculpts the rock into arches and whispers, there lies a site so out of place it feels like the landscape is playing tricks on you. From above, it looks like three basins, side by side, shallow boat-shaped hollows, carved directly into the red rock, each one about 40 feet long, and smooth along the inner curve. Their contours mirror the hulls of old seafaring vessels. Their bases curve, gently tapering at both ends. Their sides are too perfect to be natural. You step into one. It feels like stepping into the skeleton of something long dead and half forgotten, or half remembered. Each of the basins has tiny notches at its lowest edge, little carved slots that could have once held supports, or ropes, or braces for something wooden. They resemble dry docks, not symbolic ones, functional, practical, used, except they weren't. There is no sea here, no river, no lake, not now, not ever. The nearest body of water, large enough to justify a dock, is miles away, and even that's seasonal. These structures were never submerged, never moistened by waves, never given over to any aquatic purpose that makes geographic sense. So what are they? Historians still debate whether this is a ritual site or the remnant of a truly bizarre engineering effort. Some archaeologists propose that these dry docks were carved to symbolize ships' representations of sacred vessels meant to carry souls into the afterlife. In some Middle Eastern traditions, boats were metaphors for transition, for journey, for rebirth. But there are no tombs nearby, no offerings, no bones. Just these stone ships. And then there's the spiral. Inside, 2 of the 3 basins carved so faintly it's almost invisible, unless the light strikes just right. There are spiral grooves, shallow curling lines, etched into the base of the stone, like stylized whirlpools. They don't seem decorative. They follow precise mathematical spirals, possibly logarithmic, possibly mimicking the flow of water, or the movement of stars. Because here's where it starts to get weird. In 2016, a team of researchers scanned the basins with LiDAR and magnetic mapping equipment. One of the readings taken during a spring equinox picked up a subtle alignment. When the sun reaches a particular angle, shadows from the surrounding cliffs trace across the basins in a way that mimics waves, just for a few minutes, just once a year. But it happens. Coincidence? Historians still debate whether this alignment was planned or simply noticed and revered after the fact. But if the basins were built for symbolic reasons, why the industrial precision, the smoothness of the interior walls, the symmetry, the echo of real usable ship dry docks, not imagined vessels, working ones? Whoever carved these didn't just imitate ships. They knew ships, understood how hulls needed to sit, how balance worked, but no tools were left behind. No tool marks even. The cuts are too clean for Bronze Age picks and too rounded for metal chisels. Some theorize they used a polishing technique with quartz sand and constant water flushing, but again, there's no water here. Never was. So, what exactly were they doing? The area around the site is barren, but not empty. A mile away, faint outlines of platforms, maybe staging areas, maybe nothing, stretch into the rocky flatland. There's a rhythm to them, like foundations meant to hold something temporary. Canvas wood machinery. One slab, partially buried under windblown dust, contains a patch of scorched stone. Samples from its surface revealed trace amounts of oxidized iron manganese and a resin of unknown origin, as if something burned here or was sealed. Historians still debate whether this basin complex was part of a lost experiment, an attempt to build ships where they could not be used. Or worse, an attempt to build something that only looked like ships. Local Bedouin call the site Al-Murabit, the mooring, not a place of travel, a place of waiting. When asked why the name, an old shepherd simply shrugged, because they were always tied down. No one knows who they were, and the local stories don't help much. There are no legends of desert boats or ancient floods here, just murmurs. Something about the vessels of silence, the kind of phrase that sounds poetic until you realize no one will say it twice. Some fringe theorists believe the basins were receivers, structures meant to channel energy sound or even starlight. Their shape and spiral grooves may have allowed them to serve as resonance chambers, amplifying low frequencies from natural or artificial sources. That's speculation, But there's one detail that keeps coming up. In low moonlight, especially during waning phases, people have reported that the spiral grooves glow. Not brightly, not for long, just enough to catch the corner of your eye. Tests revealed the presence of a rare moss species nicknamed mirage moss, which emits faint bioluminescence under extreme darkness. The moss grows only in depressions that are sheltered, wind-protected, and deeply shaded, like the bottoms of these basins. Is it natural, or was it planted? No one knows. You step into one of the basins at night. The desert is cold dry. The wind moves across the surface like a slow sigh. Inside, the silence is thick, not just the absence of sound, but something more like a room that has been holding its breath for 1,000 years. You place your hand on the spiral groove. The stone is smoother than it should be, worn in a way that speaks not of age, but of use, not worship, not ceremony, activity. And that's what haunts you, because these aren't relics. They don't feel old. They feel paused, like someone meant to come back, like something is still waiting to be loaded into the hull, or lowered into the groove, or perhaps released. You leave the basin and turn back, just as the moon creeps over the edge of the canyon wall. For a split second, the basin's curve catches the light and glows like water, like a ship made of stone, and the desert remembers the sea. The sun is high and unforgiving as you make your way across a wind-blasted plateau in Western Australia. It's not a landscape that invites curiosity, just flat scrubland red dust and the occasional ghost of a eucalyptus tree bowing under its own dryness. Nothing moves, nothing sings. But then you see the trench, not deep, maybe waist high, but clean, straight, too perfect. You follow it, and before long, another appears, then another. They crisscross the land in an uneasy rhythm, trenches, pits, quarried hollows, some rectangular, some square, a few shaped like long benches, carved into sandstone and quartz-rich rock. But there are no signs of removal, no stone blocks stacked nearby, no wheel tracks, no drag marks, no settlements where the stone might have been used. The quarry has been carved, and yet nothing was taken. This is one of the quarries of silence. They exist all over the Pilbara and Victoria regions of Australia, tucked away in hard-to-reach places. Carved intentionally, sometimes precisely, sometimes roughly. But none of them show signs of production. No stone debris, no flake piles, no hammerstones or chisels left behind. Historians still debate whether these were functional sites, spiritual zones, or something stranger, because here's what makes them truly mysterious. They weren't abandoned halfway. They were finished. Pits are shaped cleanly. Block outlines are cut on 3 sides, ready to be freed from the rock. Bench cuts are complete. Faces have been smoothed, some even polished. But the stones were never moved. Why? One possibility is ceremonial practice. In some Aboriginal traditions, the land is alive. Every rock, every tree, every river, part of a story, part of a songline. And in those stories, there are rules. Certain stones are sacred to the country. You don't take them. You shape them. You honor them. And you leave them. Some quarries may have been carved as rituals, not to harvest stone, but to give form to something already sacred. You're not building with it. You're listening to it. That idea gains strength when you walk further and come upon a particularly large rectangular pit. Its walls have been etched with repeating arcs, crescent shapes like waves, or wind too consistent to be random, too quiet to be decorative. On the ground inside, you find small grooves, ridges carved so precisely they form a ladder-like pattern along the stone face. Not functional, symbolic. Some researchers believe this pit was never meant to produce stone. It was meant to mark a threshold, a crossing between stories, a place where earth met memory. And maybe that's all it ever needed to be. But not all the quarries can be explained that way. Others are stark industrial rows of blocks laid out in a grid mid-extraction. Some are massive, shaped with force and skill. These don't sing of ceremony. They echo with intention. Someone meant to build something here, then never did. In one site, tools were found: stone mauls, rough chisels, but no hammer fragments, no workspaces, just the beginnings of construction. A project that never started. Why stop? There's no sign of conflict, no collapse, no fire. The land hasn't shifted dramatically. These weren't lost to nature. They were paused or abandoned with purpose. Some believe they were training sites, places where apprentices learned the art of stonework. But if so, why no nearby constructions? Where are the temples, the enclosures, the pillars? No such buildings exist in proximity. No settlements, no roads. Other theories go deeper into the strange intersection of geology and mystery. Because some of the stone blocks left behind contain magnetic anomalies, they react subtly to compasses. Not dramatically, but enough to cause spin or drift in certain spots. Enough to scramble magnetometers during scanning surveys. Some researchers have speculated that these anomalies might be what drew people to the sites, that the stone itself was special, selected not just for strength, but for what it could do unseen. There's even talk, quiet fringe talk, that these quarries were part of a global pattern, that they echo the unused blocks at Baalbek, the half-finished stones at Aswan, the kept-in-place monoliths found across South America. A suggestion that maybe the carving wasn't for transport. Maybe the carving was the point. The shaping of stone, the whispering into it, and then the stillness. One pit in Victoria contains a particularly strange feature: a flat stone panel 20 feet long, covered in a faint checkerboard pattern. At first assumed to be natural fracture, but later revealed to be scored cut with precision, with deliberate spacing. No other site nearby uses this motif. Was it a blueprint? A template? A calendar? No one knows. You stand at the edge of the trench now. The sun burns overhead. The wind moves dust into your shoes. The land feels quiet, but not empty. Like it's watching, waiting. You look down at the half-cut blocks, shaped and abandoned, and you feel it. Intention without destination, purpose without product. It's unsettling, because we like our history with endings, with reasons. But here, there is only process, only shaping, and then silence. So what were these quarries? Unfinished temples, sacred training grounds, recordings made in stone, not to be read, but to be felt. Historians still debate whether these quarries were sites of failure or sites of something we no longer understand. All that's left are cuts in stone, marks of decision, places where hands once worked with force and reverence and then stopped and never came back. You crouch beside one block half freed from the earth and place your hand on it. It is smooth, cool, and very, very quiet. A monument not to what was built, but to what was meant to be. And maybe that's enough. Maybe not all messages are finished. Some are just carved and left behind. There's a village on a hill in central Turkey that doesn't stay where it's supposed to. At first glance, it looks like any other rural settlement stone homes, with flat roofs, narrow footpaths winding between olive groves, a mosque that has clearly been patched and repatched over generations. The usual. But then someone hands you a map from the 1950s, and you realize something strange. The buildings are in the wrong place, or rather, they were in the right place back then. Now they've moved, only slightly, maybe 2 or 3 centimeters per year. But over decades, that adds up. Whole houses have drifted downhill. Stone foundations have migrated. Doorways have slipped out of alignment. Low walls lean forward like tired men. It's not decay, it's motion. The locals call it the walking village. In Turkish, the phrase carries both affection and exasperation, like a pet that keeps wandering off. You'd laugh until you stand inside one of the oldest homes and notice that the floor tilts downhill. Subtly, consistently. Enough that a marble will roll slowly toward the door all by itself. Geologists have confirmed the cause: seasonal soil creep. The village was built atop a bed of clay-rich subsoil that expands when wet and contracts when dry. Rain comes in winter, saturating the ground. Then the hot, arid summers bake it. Over centuries, this cycle has acted like a slow conveyor belt sliding the town downhill inch by inch. Historians still debate whether the original settlers understood what they were building on. Maybe they thought it was solid. Maybe they simply didn't care. Or maybe they chose this land because of something else, something older than structure. Maybe because of where the water came from, or where the sun hit the soil in late autumn. Whatever the reason, they stayed, and they adapted. You see it in the architecture. The older homes, stone and mortar built by hand, are the most warped. Some lean like drunkards, their beams wedged into place with stones and split logs to keep the angles livable. You walk through doorways that used to be square, now rhomboid. Ceilings sag, steps crack, but they're still lived in. Families don't abandon these buildings. They reinforce them, re-level them, add new stone under the old walls to nudge the structure upright for another season or two. Some residents use counterweights, massive blocks of concrete tied with steel cables uphill of the house, trying to tug the structure back against gravity. The houses fight the hill, and the hill always wins. There's a community center at the top of the village called the Hall That Walks. It was originally built with a wide base and reinforced columns, but now it leans slightly west. Inside, if you sit in one of the old chairs near the wall, you feel like you're slowly tilting. They host weddings there, funeral meals, town meetings. They sweep the dust, light the candles, and ignore the incline. Because what else can you do? This isn't a landslide. It's not a disaster. It's just the price of staying. There's no evidence of older structures beneath the town. No signs of Bronze Age ruins. Nothing Roman. It's like the town began here on this slow slope and has been learning to live on a moving foundation ever since. Historians still debate whether this place should be preserved or relocated, but the villagers don't see it as broken. They see it as alive. One elder said, "The town breathes like the mountain. Sometimes it leans in, sometimes it lets go." You can see it clearest in the cornerstones. Each year, a team from the local university measures them carefully, marking the exact coordinates of selected stones embedded into the foundations of homes' walls and terraces. In one particularly telling case, a house built in 1923 has shifted more than 4 meters downhill. Slowly, smoothly, every stone stayed in its place. It's the ground that moved. A mobile home in the oldest sense. The phenomenon is called geotechnical creep, and it affects many areas with certain soil types. But here, it has become part of the culture. You talk to people born in this village, and they'll tell you how their grandfather rebuilt the same wall 3 times, how their mother carried stones back uphill after a heavy winter, how the cemetery had to be moved slightly because the graves kept settling. There's no panic, just persistence. And something else too, a kind of intimacy with time that most places don't experience. Because here, change doesn't announce itself. It simply happens. A step creaks in a new way. A door doesn't shut the same. A shelf slides a little more. And every time you adjust, you place a new stone under the sag. You add a brace. You adapt. There's poetry in it. A city that moves, but doesn't fall. A people who stay, even when their homes are slipping away. You walk along one of the alleys now, narrow shaded, lined with vines, and you feel it. Not in your eyes, but in your balance. The world is crooked here, but not in a bad way. In a way that says we're still here, still standing, still adjusting. You reach a house halfway down the hill, where the owners have painted a white line along their kitchen wall. Each year, they mark the new tilt of the floor by hanging a spoon from a string. The spoon never lies. It is moved 13 times. They smile when they show you. Proud, not ashamed. They live in a house that walks, and they walk with it. Maybe that's the secret. Maybe the mystery of this village isn't how it stays upright, but why it wants to. Historians still debate whether the town should be studied or left alone. But no one debates that it's extraordinary. Because in a world obsessed with permanence, here is a place that teaches resilience, adaptation, the art of staying even when everything shifts. You leave the village with dust on your boots and a faint ache in your ankles from the slope. The sun sets over the dry hills, and you realize some cities were built to endure. This one was built to move, and that might be the strongest foundation of all. At first, you think it's just another ripple in the water. Lake Titicaca stretches wide and calm across the border of Bolivia and Peru. High in the Andes, more sky than surface. The waves are soft, the air thin, and the quiet profound. This isn't a place that gives up secrets easily. But if you lean over the edge of a boat on a windless morning and look down, you might catch a glimpse of something strange just beneath the surface. A square, flat, angular, and far too perfect to be natural. 80 meters across, 2 meters below the waterline, carved from polished granite slabs, joined so tightly you can barely slip a fingernail between them. A platform, not broken or scattered intact, as if it were just waiting for the lake to lower again and reveal it in full. This is the floating platform, as it's come to be called. Though it doesn't float at all. It simply rests, perpetually submerged, resting silently beneath the slow rhythm of the waves. Historians still debate whether the structure was a ceremonial platform, a submerged dock, or a kind of aquatic altar. No records mention it. No known Incan or Tiwanaku sites describe it. And yet, it's there, clean, deliberate, and older than it has any right to be. Divers first stumbled on it during a sonar scan of the lake bed, expecting to find nothing but sediment and stones. Instead, they discovered geometry. The platform is almost exactly square. Its outer edges form a low perimeter like the lip of a shallow pool. Inside the floor is level composed of dozens of flat stones, each cut to fit the next. There are no stairs, no drains, no inscriptions, just granite gently humming beneath the water. When examined under light at certain angles, the stones reveal narrow, incised grooves around the edges, channels possibly designed to allow water to flow evenly in and out, or perhaps to catch the sun. Because during solstices, when the morning light hits the lake just right, something happens. The surface of the water above the platform turns brighter, not reflective, not shimmering, but glowing, a strange optical phenomenon. Not sunlight bouncing off waves, something subtler. Some researchers theorize that the polished granite refracts the sunlight, creating a thin dispersed beam that bends around the water's motion. It doesn't happen every day. Only when the lake is perfectly still. Only when the sun is low. Only when no one is making a sound. And then briefly, the lake glows from within. Historians still debate whether this effect was designed or discovered. Was the platform submerged by rising water levels over millennia? Possibly. Geological studies show that Lake Titicaca's shoreline has fluctuated dramatically over the last 4,000 years. This platform may have once stood at the lake's edge, or it may have always been beneath. Either way, it's not alone. Fragments of pottery have been found nearby, small chalices, miniaturized llama figurines, and bundles of coca leaves preserved in the mud. None of them show signs of mass ritual dumping. Each seems placed with care, one by one, offering after offering, as if people came here to stand at the edge, make their gesture, and walk away. There's no nearby temple. No settlement remains. No roads or causeways leading in. Only silence. And water. One of the platform's most curious features is its temperature. Tests have revealed that the water immediately above it is consistently warmer than the surrounding lake by just a fraction of a degree. Not enough to create current, but enough to attract fish. Divers noticed it first. A concentration of small silver fish swimming in lazy spirals above the platform's center. Not feeding, just hovering. Was it a natural phenomenon or intentional design? Some suggest that the platform may have been part of an aquatic ritual system, where fish were part of the ceremony drawn by temperature shifts or mineral traces in the stone. Others wonder if the heat is residual, if something beneath the platform is still generating it. But scans show no cavity beneath, no geothermal vent, just earth, packed tight. Still, the warmth lingers. So does the sound. At night, divers and researchers working near the site have reported a low-frequency hum, a soft vibration that seems to emanate from the platform and travel upward. It doesn't register on standard equipment, but it's felt in the body, in the ribs, in the teeth. The locals call it la respiración de la piedra, the breathing of the stone. No one can explain it. Some dismiss it as lake acoustics. Others believe it's the resonance of the granite reacting to subtle tectonic motion. But there's something too regular, too calm about it, as if the stone itself is waiting. You visit on a day when the water is flat like glass. The boat barely drifts. You lean over the side, staring down. The sun is behind you. You can see the platform clearly now. It's not ancient and worn like most ruins. It's clean. It looks like someone just polished it this morning. Like it could still be used. You find yourself wondering, used for what? There's a theory, a fringe one, that the platform wasn't for ritual or astronomy or utility. It was for visibility, that it was built just beneath the surface on purpose, meant to appear only when the light was right, when the lake was still, when the air was quiet. Not a monument to be worshipped, a reminder, a whisper in stone saying we were here, not to shout it, not to carve it into cliffs, just to let it shimmer once a year beneath the lake's glass skin and then disappear again. You close your eyes, and in the hush of the water, in the hush of your own breath, you hear it. Not a voice, not a name, just a single note rising from the deep. A platform, a pulse, a breath that never ends. You'd miss it if you weren't paying attention. It sits alone on the Mongolian steppe where the land rolls gently toward the horizon, and the sky stretches so wide it seems to swallow sound. No roads lead to it, no trail signs, no visitor center, just grass and wind and sky and two vertical stone slabs with a single horizontal one laid across the top. A gate, that's all it is. A stone arch. No wall attached. No fence beside it. Just a freestanding structure made of sandstone standing quietly where the grass begins to whisper and the morning sun comes early. The locals call it Sudanu, the Gate of Rising Light, and it's earned the name because twice a year at dawn on the equinoxes, something happens. The light cuts across the steppe with surgical precision, low and golden, brushing the tops of the grasses like a hand through hair. And for exactly 40 seconds, the sun's first rays pass through the gate in such a way that a shadow appears in the air beyond it, not on the ground, in the air, a vertical distortion, human-sized, tall, narrow shoulders, arms slightly outstretched, no detail, no face, just the presence of a figure not cast by a person, but conjured by the angle of the sun, the humidity in the air, and the perfect symmetry of the gate. It doesn't move. It doesn't speak. It just stands there. And then it fades. No one knows who built the gate. There are no ruins nearby, no inscriptions, no evidence of religious structures, shamanic markers, or settlements. Just this one perfect stone frame placed in a field where sheep now graze and herders ride by without comment. Historians still debate whether the gate was part of an astronomical observatory, a spiritual shrine, or something else entirely. But its precision is undeniable. The stones are not native to this exact spot. They were quarried from a ridge several kilometers to the north. Heavy slabs, each weighing over a ton. Moving them would have taken coordination, labor, and purpose. And then there's the alignment. The gate is perfectly calibrated to the solar equinoxes, not roughly, exactly. The sun rises directly through the opening, just high enough to pass beneath the lintel and spill forward across the grassland in a column of light. The figure appears in the exact center for the exact amount of time between the first light and the slight shift in angle that sends the rays off kilter. You don't need to believe in magic to be stunned by the mechanics. It's like watching a whisper take form. Some believe the figure is a guardian spirit, a watcher who appears only when the balance between day and night is exact. Others say it's a reflection of the self, a projection of whoever stands closest to the gate. But that doesn't hold up. The figure appears even when no one stands in front of it. A few local shamans say the gate is a temporal marker, not a spiritual one. That it isn't about the figure at all, it's about when it shows up. A threshold in time, not space. And still it stands. No one guards it. No one maintains it. The grass grows around its feet. The stone has weathered but not broken. The lintel has settled into the uprights so perfectly that it has never shifted, even in the fiercest steppe winds. A researcher once spent a week camped near the gate, trying to capture the moment on a high-resolution camera rig. He got the shot. The figure tall and still. But later, when he examined the frame closely, he noticed something odd. The figure didn't seem two-dimensional. It had depth, like it was standing in air not painted on it. He ran light analysis, checked angles, ran models to simulate the refraction. But the numbers didn't explain it. The distortion wasn't just shadow, it was absence. Like the light had chosen to not exist in that shape for a few seconds, a shape cut out of dawn. He never published the paper. Too strange, too inconclusive. But he still visits every spring and fall. You stand before the gate now, just as the first light warms the horizon. The wind is still. Even the birds are quiet. The silence here doesn't feel empty. It feels held like a breath waiting to be exhaled. The sun rises. The shadow appears. It's taller than you, older than you. It doesn't look at you, but you feel seen anyway. Not judged, not measured, just registered, like a memory being rewritten. Then the light shifts, and the shape is gone. The step returns. Nothing marks the moment. No applause, no thunder. Just a gate, standing alone in a field that doesn't care whether you understood what just happened. And that perhaps is the point. The gate doesn't speak. It doesn't explain. It just aligns and waits, year after year, for that one impossible second when the sky draws a shape that shouldn't be and then forgets it again. Historians still debate whether Sudanese is a shrine, a trick of light, or something stranger. But you're not sure it matters because you stood there and it saw you. And now some small part of you feels remembered. Not by name, not by face, by presence. A line of light across the earth, a shape inside the air, a whisper that said nothing and said everything. You enter through a crack in the cliff face, just wide enough for your shoulders to squeeze through. It smells of dust and minerals and old cold air, the kind that hasn't moved in centuries. Your flashlight flickers as you duck down and push deeper, and soon the sound of the world outside fades completely. This is the Shadow Cavern of Yemen. It lies in the Haraz Mountains, far from any road deeper still than the maps are willing to mark. There are no signs pointing to it, no names etched in stone, no relics of saints or kings, just a cave. And inside that cave, shadows that move, but not the kind cast by your flashlight. These ones are older. The villagers in Wadi Haraz won't go near it. Not because of curses or monsters or any story they'll admit to out loud. They just say it's not for us. And that's that. You go anyway, because people say that when the sun starts to dip and the outside light filters through a gap in the mountain, just so something happens inside. They say the animals wake up. The first chamber is wide and smooth-shaped, like a bowl turned upside down. The walls curve inward. The ceiling rises higher than you expect. There's nothing here, no paintings, no bones, no tools, just stone. Slick in places, rippled like wind-frozen sand. And then the light shifts, not directly, not brightly. Just a faint, diffused beam slipping down through a shaft far above your head. It creeps across the chamber like a ghost, touches the wall. And then there it is, a shape, not drawn, not carved, cast, the silhouette of a gazelle frozen mid-leap. Its horns curved its body tense. So perfect it looks like it was sculpted in air. But it isn't a drawing. It's a projection, a pattern made from nothing but light angle and the architecture of the cavern. And it moves. As the sun continues to set, the beam shifts. A leopard appears next, crouched, coiled. Then a pair of ibex, their horns arched skyward. Each figure appears not on the floor, not in front of you, but on the walls. Moving from left to right like a flickering film. Only the cave didn't need a projector. It needed only time. Historians still debate whether the shadows are intentional. Could erosion alone carve a cave into a lens this precise? Could wind and water and geological time create a natural light show this intricate? It seems unlikely. The shadows emerge every day with uncanny regularity right as dusk settles, and they always follow the same sequence: gazelle, leopard, ibex. Then a final shape, a spiral like a coiled snake or maybe something else. A sun, a symbol. It's the only figure that doesn't resemble an animal, and it lingers the longest. You move to the next chamber. The air grows colder. The walls grow smoother. This room has a different shape, longer, more vertical, with a flat back wall and a slightly sloped ceiling. It feels like a stage or a sanctuary. More shadows emerge here. Not animals this time, but pairs, two birds flying in formation. A fish, a hand, a crescent. One by one, they play out across the stone, never overlapping, never repeating. It's like watching a language perform itself, but there's no writing here, no cuneiform, no script of any kind, just light and shape, movement and memory. One theory suggests the cave was an acoustic temple, not just visual, that the shadows were paired with sound. In 2021, a team brought in resonance sensors and discovered something stunning at certain times of day when the chamber cools rapidly and the outside air is still. The stone hums, not from vibration, from temperature shift. Air moving from hot to cold creates microcurrents, which in turn generate frequencies in enclosed spaces. In the shadow cavern, those frequencies form a patterned chord, a low note that cycles in rhythm with the shadow display. The cave is singing to itself, or to something else. Locals tell of old dreams, nightmares really shared by shepherds who spent the night too close to the cliffs. Dreams of walking animals made of smoke, of stone that weeps light, of a place that doesn't let you leave the same. They won't explain further. They just say, the cave remembers. One archaeologist proposed that the shadows were meant to mark the seasonal calendar. Each figure might correspond to a phase in the cycle of planting, harvest, or migration. The leopard for drought, the birds for arrival, the fish for rain. But then why hide it? Why bury this calendar so deep in the earth that only light at a specific moment each day and only during a certain part of the year can reveal it? Unless it wasn't for many eyes, unless it was for one, or one kind. You run your hand along the back wall of the third chamber and find something unexpected: texture. Not carved letters, not symbols, just the smoothest patch of stone you've ever touched. As if hundreds of hands have passed here. Over years, over generations. No residue, no oil, just wear. This spot is slightly warmer than the air around it. Not by much. But you notice. You stand in the dark now, your flashlight turned off, letting the last of the natural light fade. For a moment, there's only blackness, and then movement, not of your eyes, of shadow. Shapes projected from nothing, sliding across the wall behind you. The final sequence. You feel them more than see them, like echoes, like memory made visible. You leave the cave slowly. No one says goodbye. The wind resumes. The warmth of the surface returns like a forgotten memory, and the shadows stay behind, not painted, not carved, remembered. They will return tomorrow and the next day and the next, until the cliff collapses, until the sun dies, until there is no more light. And even then, the stone will still know how to cast the shapes. Just in case someone brings a new sun with them, you expect to find fire. It's one of those things you don't even question. Humans, after all, bring fire with them wherever they go, especially in cold places, especially in a land as brutal and wind-stripped as the coastal cliffs of Iceland. Fire is life. Fire is food. Fire is survival. But not here, not in this place, because buried beneath layers of moss and ash tucked along the edge of the northern Atlantic lie the remains of a city. A real one. Not a scattering of huts or a seasonal camp, but a planned settlement, rectangular buildings, paved thresholds, wells, drainage systems. Everything you'd expect from a living, breathing community, except there is no fire. Not a trace, not a single hearth, not a single scorch mark, not one pile of ash, not one burnt log, not even the blackened stones you'd expect from a fireplace left exposed to the elements for centuries. They call it the city without fire, and it shouldn't exist. Historians still debate whether the site is an anomaly or a paradigm breaker, because this isn't an oversight. This is an absence that repeats. House after house, chamber after chamber, all showing signs of habitation. Tools, pottery, woven textiles preserved in the peat-rich soil. Shells from the shore. Animal bones with cut marks from butchering, but nothing was ever cooked. The bones were raw, the fish scales intact. No signs of roasting, boiling, charring. No soot. No flint flakes typically associated with fire-making. Even the roof beams collapsed, but intact, show no signs of smoke exposure. It's like they lived here, and they didn't warm themselves, didn't cook their meals, didn't use light at night, and somehow they survived. But how? Some theories say they used geothermal heat. Iceland is a volcanic island after all. Maybe they settled above a hot spring and used the Earth's warmth. But thermal mapping shows no geothermal activity at the site, not now, and not in the recent geologic past. Others think they came only during the warm seasons, a temporary coastal outpost for gathering shellfish, harvesting seaweed, or drying meat caught inland. But again, the evidence disagrees. The buildings are permanent. Foundations dug deep. Walls double thick to block winter winds. Grain stores. Water cisterns. It was built to last and to endure the cold. Which brings up an unsettling idea. Maybe they chose not to use fire, not because they lacked the knowledge, but because it was forbidden. Why? Some ancient traditions speak of fire as sacred, even dangerous. A force not to be wielded casually. A gift stolen from the gods. Useful, yes, but capable of drawing the wrong kind of attention. In Norse myth, fire isn't just a tool. It's alive. A spirit. A boundary breaker. Perhaps this community feared that boundary, or perhaps they feared something on the other side of it. Still, that doesn't explain how they survived the Arctic winds, the freezing rain, the long nights. Until you look at the architecture, the homes were insulated not with fire, but with design. Walls packed with layers of dried seaweed and moss. Roofs reinforced with bone and turf. Entrances that spiral inward like conch shells preventing direct airflow. A kind of thermal maze. Some walls are 3 feet thick with layered inner chambers that trap body heat like the dens of Arctic animals. The floors were sunken below the frost line. Beds were lined with animal skins and stuffed with feathers. It would have been cold, but survivable. And then there's the light, One chamber contains a series of polished stone plates positioned to reflect and scatter what little sunlight came through the narrow entrance shafts. Mirrors of a sort. Stone light catchers. At solstice, the light enters the central hall, strikes the first plate, and ricochets down a wall, illuminating the far chamber. A tiny display. Brief. Beautiful. Like a secret ceremony with the sun. Historians still debate whether this was religious practical or purely symbolic, but whatever it was, it replaced the need for flame. And it did so intentionally. Even the cooking problem has an answer of sorts. Chemical analysis of residue inside ceramic vessels found traces of fermented fish, seaweed, and milk. Foods that can be prepared without heat. Preserved, soaked, cured. Not delicious by modern standards, but enough to survive. It's possible the entire diet was cold. Sea greens, raw mollusks, dried meat softened in water, fermented shark. You'd expect signs of malnutrition, but the bones that have been recovered, only a few, buried in loose soil far from the settlement, show strong teeth, robust femurs. No sign of vitamin deficiency. This wasn't desperation, it was a system. But what kind of system builds a city in one of the coldest corners of the world and refuses to light a fire? Maybe it wasn't just survival. Maybe it was ritual. The one body buried nearby, a child no more than 8 years old, was found wrapped in sealskin, laid gently in a fetal position, surrounded by polished stones shaped like eyes. Not watching, but remembering. Perhaps fire was associated with death, with endings. Perhaps avoiding it was a way to reject mortality. Or perhaps it was a pact, a vow taken by a group who believed the flame had burned them once too deeply. And maybe it wasn't just spiritual, maybe it was practical. Because fire makes smoke, and smoke can be seen from above by things that should have been forgotten. It's just a theory. But sometimes theories cling harder when facts fall short. You walk through the settlement boots, crunching over ancient gravel. The air bites at your skin, and the wind doesn't howl, it sings. The walls around you are low, now ruined by centuries of freeze and thaw, but their shapes remain. Square, careful, deliberate. You crouch where a hearth should have been. There's nothing, just packed earth, cold and smooth. You close your eyes, imagining the dark. Families huddled together, children breathing softly into the crooks of their mother's arms. No fire crackling, no light flickering, just warmth. Shared, quiet, enduring, and above them stone, above them sky, and no smoke to betray them. A city without fire, not forgotten, just unwilling to be seen. There are no bricks here, no stone, no mortar, no wood, and yet somehow a temple stands quietly defying the wind in the middle of the Peruvian salt flats. Bleached white, crusted in pink and amber. Fragile in appearance, but impossibly whole. They call it the Salt Temple because that's exactly what it is, a building made entirely of salt. Block by block, slab by slab, fitted together like a child's vision of a monument. It squats low against the horizon, no taller than a single-story house. There are no towers, no spires, no decorative motifs, no carvings of gods or guardians. Just rough symmetry and quiet angles formed from compressed salt that glistens faintly in the midday sun. And somehow, it's still here. Historians still debate whether the structure is ancient or merely old. Salt, after all, is notoriously difficult to date. It preserves. It absorbs. It confuses carbon. Time clings to it awkwardly, leaving only the evidence of absence. But satellite imagery tells part of the story. The Salt Temple appears in aerial photos taken as far back as the 1950s, long before tourism reached this far into the dry interior, before any modern road connected this remote expanse to the world. And in each image, it's unchanged. Same outline, same crumbling western corner, same strange shadow that stretches further than it should at dusk. You step closer, boots crunching on crystallized earth. The salt crunches like thin ice, but the structure itself remains solid, almost unnaturally so. No roof, no altar, no statue. Just walls smooth and reflective in places, jagged in others, as if nature and human hands reached an agreement and then both walked away. The first thing you notice is how it feels. Not sacred, not haunted, just still. You enter through a narrow gap between two leaning pillars. The interior is cool, almost cold, even under the high desert sun. The wind doesn't come inside. The salt seems to repel it. Inside, the air is still and dry, like the breath of a place that forgot it was supposed to exhale. There are 4 chambers arranged in a cross. Each one holds nothing. No signs of habitation, no clay, no bones, no tools. Just crystalline silence. But under the right light, especially in early morning, one of the eastern walls glows. Not dramatically, just a faint radiance where the salt has been polished, smooth, either by wind or by hand. There's a streak of pink across its face like a brush stroke, a mineral signature, or a fading ritual. Nobody knows. Some believe the temple was built as a shelter, temporary protection for salt harvesters caught in the fierce winds of the dry season. But that theory struggles to explain the structure's scale, its symmetry, or the careful interlocking blocks that hold together without cement or reinforcement. Others believe it was a ceremonial station, a place to give thanks to the land that fed them. Salt was sacred in many ancient Andean cultures. It preserved meat. It healed wounds. It powered trade. It kept the dead from spoiling. To build with it was to honor it, but building with salt is foolish, or it should be. Rain dissolves it. Wind eats it. Time crumbles it. And yet this temple stands. Year after year. Season after season. So how? The answer may lie in its very location. This stretch of the Peruvian highlands is unusually dry, even by desert standards. Annual rainfall is minimal. Some years, it doesn't rain at all. And when it does, the salt crust of the land absorbs what it can, then cracks, hardens, and heals. The temple behaves the same. In rare storms, parts of it melt. Slowly. You can see the corners slough like candle wax. Salt beads form, run down the walls, pool, and then vanish into the floor. For a moment, it looks like the temple is dying, but then the sun returns, and the wind dries everything, and the salt hardens again. It's a building that erodes and reforms like a slow breath, a seasonal sculpture, a memory that remakes itself. One researcher described it as architecture by evaporation. Another called it a prayer written in disappearing ink. Historians still debate whether the temple was ever finished. Some believe it was built quickly for a singular ceremony, then left behind half-forgotten more myth than monument. But local stories tell a different tale. The Quechua elders, when pressed, speak of crystalline blood, a phrase that doesn't translate easily. They say the temple was born of salt, wept by the mountains after the gods withdrew from the land. A place where sorrow was crystallized and offered back to the earth. Symbolic, sure, but when you stand in the center of the temple, feet crunching on a floor that once may have been swept daily, you don't feel myth. You feel residue, as if something happened here once long ago, and it mattered. At the base of the inner wall, beneath layers of wind-borne dust, archaeologists found tiny beads no bigger than a grain of rice made from compressed salt and colored with something unknown. Blue, almost turquoise, a color that doesn't belong to this place. A color that fades the moment it's touched. They disintegrate when removed from the temple. No one knows how they were made, but they were placed in a circle. 13 of them, around nothing, or maybe something that's now gone, or never meant to be seen. The Salt Temple isn't a ruin, it's a gesture, a motion in time repeated until forgotten. Built not to last forever, but to be rebuilt by the land itself again and again. You step back outside. The sun is lower now, and the wind picks up. Salt dust dances across the flats, catching the light like powdered glass. The temple doesn't shimmer. It waits. Rain will come again someday. Just enough to melt its edges, erase its corners, and test whether it still remembers how to stand. And when it does, the land will choose what to keep, what to return, what to forget. You walk away boots, leaving brief impressions on the crusted ground. Behind you, the Salt Temple sits motionless, caught in the space between dissolution and defiance, a monument to impermanence, and a reminder that sometimes the most powerful structures are not built to endure, but to fade with dignity. The hills of northern Scotland roll like old, tired waves frozen in place. There's a softness to the landscape, even when it's cold. The grass bends easy in the wind. The sky is always just a little too wide, and time seems to stretch a little longer between the clouds. It's here, miles from any village, far from paved roads and cell signal, that you'll find it just a single stone half buried in the earth. No circle surrounds it. No fence encloses it. You could walk right past and never even glance twice, until midsummer, until the solstice, because for 364 days of the year, this stone is just a monolith. Tall, slender, cut from granite so dark it reflects nothing. But on the longest day, just once, and only for a few minutes, this stone turns into a mirror. They call it the mirror stone, not because of what it shows, but because of what it remembers. At first glance, the monolith doesn't look special. It's about 7 feet tall, slightly tapered, its western face smoother than the rest. There are no carvings, no inscriptions, just age, lichen, and silence. But when researchers studied it up close, they discovered that the smooth face wasn't natural. It had been polished deliberately, likely, with a mix of quartz sand and water, worked over generations until it shone just enough to catch something very specific: the sun. Not just the sun, the solstice sun. At precisely the peak of the summer solstice, when the sun hits its highest point in the northern sky, it aligns with the mirror stone's polished face. The result isn't dramatic. You don't get a blinding reflection. It's more like a shimmer light that seems to hum in place, hovering just on the edge of visibility. For about 3 minutes, the stone reflects the sky perfectly. And then, just as quietly, it fades. Historians still debate whether this was a ritual marker, a solar calendar, or something older. But its precision is undeniable. The stone faces true north, with a tilt measured down to tenths of a degree. Whoever placed it knew the land, knew the sun, knew how to listen to the sky. But what truly unsettles visitors is not the reflection, it's what they feel. Many describe a sensation of being watched, not by someone, by something. A presence that isn't threatening, just ancient, as though the light itself has memory, as though the stone sees you not with eyes, but with time. The crofters and shepherds who pass this way call it the stone that sees. They don't speak of it often, but when they do, they lower their voices. One man told a researcher, "Don't touch it at midsummer. It remembers who you are." No one knows who built it. There's no settlement nearby, no burial site, no other standing stones to suggest a larger complex. Just this one monolith placed on a small rise with nothing around it but heather and wind. That isolation makes it even more curious. Why place a stone like this here with no audience, no community to witness the solstice reflection, no temple to amplify the event? Unless it wasn't meant for people, unless it was meant for the sky or something beyond it. One researcher proposed a theory that the mirror stone isn't a marker, it's a signal. A visual flare sent once a year reflected upward, not outward. A message written in light and geometry in silence. What kind of mind thinks to build that? And why? In recent years, geologists analyzed the granite. It's not native to this hill. It came from a quarry 40 kilometers away, rough boggy land to the east. That means the stone was moved, dragged, hauled, maybe even floated on a raft across some forgotten river. Not because it was convenient, because it had to be here. Another theory links the mirror stone to a network of similar polished stones scattered across Europe and beyond, found in Sardinia, Mongolia, Peru. Each one solitary, each one aligned to the solstice, each one standing alone. Could they be connected? Are they part of a forgotten global language of light? Or are we projecting meaning onto silence? The answers don't come. The stone never speaks, but the effect remains. You stand in front of it now near the end of June. The wind is low. The light is gold. You watch the shimmer begin, not sudden, not sharp. Just a deepening glow, like the stone is remembering how to shine. You see your reflection, soft warped, barely there. You blink, and for a moment, you're not sure if the shape looking back is you, because it's standing too still, too tall, too patient. Then the light shifts, the shimmer dies, and the stone becomes just a stone again. You step back, feeling colder than you should. The sky is still bright, but the moment has passed. It always does. The mirror stone doesn't explain. It only performs. Once, every year, and then it waits. Historians still debate whether the monolith is ancient science or ancient faith. But you feel neither. You feel seen, as though you stepped into a ritual that forgot its meaning long ago, but never stopped performing it. Not because someone was watching, but because something might be. You leave the hill, slowly boots, brushing the heather wind at your back, and behind you, the mirror stone returns to shadow. Until next year, until the sky remembers, and the light returns, and the stone gleams again. Somewhere in the limestone cliffs of southern France, there's a cave that shouldn't exist. It's not marked on any tourist map. It's not open to the public. In fact, if you blink as you walk the old shepherd trail that skirts the valley floor, you'll miss the narrow split in the rock entirely. But if you squeeze through that crevice, head ducked, heart pounding, you'll find yourself descending into darkness that feels older than language. This is La Chambre Sans Temps, the room without time, and no one knows who made it. At first, it looks like any other karst cave. Jagged walls, dripping water, faint echoes. But as you walk deeper, more by feel than by sight, you come to a chamber so perfect it feels designed. A dome. 15 meters across, 12 meters tall. The floor is smooth, too smooth. The walls curve like the inside of a shell, gently sloping inward, with no corners, no edges, no shadows. And here's where it gets strange. There's no echo. You clap your hands, nothing. You speak, nothing. The sound vanishes as if swallowed. Acoustic engineers later confirmed what explorers already suspected: the chamber is a perfect sound trap. Its shape cancels reverberation. Frequencies die instantly. The room is so acoustically dead, it mimics a vacuum. It's like standing inside a mute thought. Historians still debate whether the chamber is natural or altered. The outer tunnels are certainly natural, eroded by water over millennia, but the main dome shows signs of intentional shaping. Chisel marks. No drill scoring. No, the surface feels melted, as if the stone had once been soft, but there are no signs of fire, no soot, no smoke damage, no carbon residue, just stone that curves as if sculpted by heat without flame, or something else entirely. On the floor of the chamber, you find them rings, 7 of them. Each one a faint groove, carved into the smooth floor, concentric like ripples from a long-forgotten drop of water. They're not wide, maybe 2 fingers, deep half a hand across in spacing. They form a perfect bullseye, centered directly under the apex of the dome, and there's no explanation. No writing, no footprints, no fire pits, no animal bones, no signs of life or death, just the rings and the silence. You sit in the center where the rings converge. There's a spot, a depression the size of a palm, smooth as glass. No scratches, no pitting. When you place your hand there, the air feels heavier, not colder, not warmer, just dense. Like sound used to live here. Like thought happened here. One researcher proposed that the chamber was a sensory deprivation temple, a place designed to erase the world, to focus inward, to prepare the mind for something deeper. Another called it an acoustic isolation chamber for souls, but perhaps the most radical theory came from a mathematician. He measured the angles of the dome, the spacing of the rings, the curvature of the walls, and found patterns, prime numbers. Specifically, the diameters of each ring increased in intervals that corresponded to a sequence of prime roots. It wasn't perfectly modern math, but it was math, and that meant design, which meant intention. But who and when? Carbon dating can't help. There are no organic materials, no wood, no bones, nothing to date. But stalactite growth along the upper dome suggests it was shaped after the natural cave formed, possibly as recently as 4,000 years ago. But that still doesn't answer why. There are no legends about this place, no Neolithic art, no signs of religious use, just whispers. Local shepherds say animals avoid the valley, that sheep get jittery when moved too close to the slope, that the birds fly around it never over. And then there's the time anomaly. Yes, that kind of anomaly. Explorers who've stayed inside the chamber alone in silence report losing track of time completely. Not in a dreamy meditative way, in a measurable way. One researcher set a timer on his wristwatch, planning to sit in the center ring for exactly 30 minutes. When he emerged, disoriented but otherwise fine, he checked the time. 73 minutes had passed. His watch still ticking, his mind certain. Other stories repeat the same pattern. Time feels shorter inside. Time is longer outside. It's not conclusive. It's not testable under rigorous controls. But it's persistent. La chambre sans temps doesn't just remove sound, it distorts time, at least for those willing to listen. Some theorists believe the room was a kind of calendar, not one marked in stars or stones, but in experience. A place where time passed differently to teach patience, or revelation, or maybe even grief. Others go further. They suggest the chamber was a communication device, not with the gods, but with the self. In the utter silence, stripped of echoes, time and sound, you begin to hear something else. Not noise, not music, just breath. The ancient rhythm of existence, the thrum of blood behind your ears, and for some whispers, not words, not voices, but intention, a question maybe, or an answer. You stand now, alone in the center ring. You whisper your own name. The air doesn't respond, but your skin prickles anyway. And for just one heartbeat, you feel it, like someone or something was just here and stepped back, quietly, to let you speak. You leave slowly. The path out is narrow. The air grows warmer. The sound of the wind returns, and outside, the sun still shines. Time resumes, but you feel a little lighter, as if part of you is still in that chamber, listening and waiting. They told you not to look for it, that even the maps don't show it anymore, that it's better left to the dunes and the vultures and the winds that erase tracks faster than you can make them. But of course you looked, and there in the middle of the Namib Desert, half buried by a slow-moving tide of rust-red sand, you find it, a stairwell, leading down, no door, no roof, just a hole in the desert, rimmed with heat shimmer and silence, with stairs made from black basalt stone, untouched by erosion. They descend at a perfect 45-degree angle, 10 feet wide, smooth and narrow, like they were carved yesterday. You step down, and the air changes, cooler, thicker, and quiet, the kind of quiet that feels intentional. Not absence, but suppression. 30 steps down, you reach a corridor, polished basalt, seamless. It slopes gently downward, like a tongue curling into the throat of something that hasn't spoken in a long, long time. This is the corridor of sleep, a name whispered in old diaries, scribbled in colonial field notes, found on a single copper plate, etched with characters no one can translate, buried in the archives of a forgotten university. And yet here it is. The corridor stretches forward into blackness, and as you walk, you begin to notice something strange about the walls. They're reflective. Not like a mirror, more like obsidian, murky and distorted. And in them, you see shapes, not your own reflection, others, tall, elongated, always a step behind. They flicker when you turn your head. They vanish when you look directly, but they're always there, in the corner of your eye. At 30 meters in, the corridor opens into a chamber, perfectly square, 20 meters by 20 meters, ceiling 15 meters high. Every surface made of the same basalt, polished to a deep sheen. No dust, no sand, no heat. The desert stays outside. At the center of the room lies a single slab, stone, flat, slightly elevated, carved with a pattern of concentric spirals that seem to spin even when they don't. You walk around it, and the illusion follows you, turning, as if watching you through movement. And here's the thing. People come here to sleep, not because they want to, because something makes them. One explorer name, redacted from records, but still remembered by locals, was found curled on the slab heart, still beating, breath slow and even. Unwakeable, he lay there for 6 days. When he finally stirred, he spoke a single word in a language no one recognized. Then he wept and left. Historians still debate whether the chamber is ritualistic, medical, or something stranger. Theories range from sensory deprivation to ancient dream incubation, like the Greek temples of Asclepius, where pilgrims slept in hopes of divine visions. But there's no record of a god here. No altar, no icon, no offering pits, just the slab and the sleep. Researchers have tried to measure the effect. EEG machines placed near the stone show spikes in delta waves, deep sleep rhythms, even when the subjects are wide awake. Heart rates drop. Breathing slows. The mind begins to drift. You don't even notice it happening. One moment, you're standing. The next, you're remembering things you never lived. Not dreams, not hallucinations, memories of places you've never seen, of voices you've never heard, a woman standing at the edge of a silver lake, a city of spires silhouetted against a violet sky, a humming noise deep and constant like the pulse of a planet. People who've entered the corridor of sleep often return with similar visions despite different backgrounds, different beliefs, different languages. They describe it the same way, like being uploaded into someone else's life. Historians still debate whether these experiences are psychological projections or something older, something embedded in the stone, in the geometry of the place. Because there's one more detail. The room is perfectly shielded from outside electromagnetic interference. Naturally, accidentally, or maybe not. Tests revealed that the basalt here contains high concentrations of magnetite and quartz minerals, known to interact with electromagnetic fields. Some believe the chamber acts like a memory chamber, preserving impressions, signals, vibrations, maybe even thoughts. As if someone or something stored experiences here waiting for new minds to plug in. A desert library, but not of books, of dreams, and you're standing inside it. You approach the slab, you sit, and for a moment, nothing happens. The stone is cold. The room is silent. The light, dim but steady, seems to come from nowhere. And then your heartbeat slows. Your thoughts stretch, and without warning, you're somewhere else, walking a corridor of green stone under a sky that breathes like lungs, listening to a song made of bells and wind, touching a hand that isn't yours. Then it's gone. You blink. You're back. The slab is beneath you. Your breath is shallow, but you feel full. Not with knowledge, with presence. Something ancient brushed against you, not to teach, just to remind. You rise slow and uncertain. There's no epiphany, no message, just the feeling of having visited something sacred, something quiet, something that does not need to be understood to be real. The corridor leads you back to the surface, and when you step into the desert light blinking against the heat, it's like waking from the kind of dream that hangs around your ribs long after you forget the details. The wind brushes your face. The sand has already begun to erase your footprints. The corridor of sleep swallows itself again, and you walk away with no proof that it was ever there. Except now, you dream in languages you've never heard. If you ask the monks, they'll smile and say, "Oh, that place, it doesn't exist." Which is exactly how you know you've found it. Tucked into the cliffs of northern Bhutan, high above the clouds and far from any path, lies a narrow ledge barely wide enough for 2 feet. And beyond that ledge, carved into the sheer rock face, sits a door. A real door, square, wooden, bound in oxidized iron that gleams green under the sun. There's no handle, no frame, no hinges, just the outline of a door flush with the cliff. They call it the door of the breathless ones. It doesn't open, not in the usual way, and it certainly doesn't let just anyone in. You have to sit and wait. And most importantly, you have to stop breathing. That's what the monks say. That the door listens. That it only answers when the breath is still, not held, surrendered. Sound ridiculous? Sure, but then you try it. You sit on the stone ledge, the wind 1,000 feet beneath your feet, and you quiet yourself. You close your eyes. You still your breath, and just before the air slips from your chest, in that final panicked gasp, you hear it, a click, so soft you'd miss it if the rest of the world weren't so quiet. The door doesn't swing. It vanishes, replaced by an archway that opens into blackness, deeper than any cave should allow. You don't step in so much as fall forward, and now you're inside. The air changes immediately. Not cold, not warm, just perfect. A breathless room. The kind of air that doesn't move because it doesn't need to. No dust, no scent, just silence. The chamber is round about 10 meters across. The walls are carved with vertical lines, hundreds of them rising from floor to ceiling, like tall reeds or ribs. Each one spaced precisely. Not a symbol, not writing, just pattern. The acoustics are bizarre. You speak, and your voice doesn't echo, it repeats. Not immediately. Not quite your voice. A slight delay, a strange modulation, like someone else trying to imitate you from somewhere deeper in the rock. Historians still debate whether this phenomenon is psychological or architectural. But here's the oddest part. Different visitors report different repetitions, not just variations in timing or pitch, different content. One monk said the room spoke a word he hadn't said aloud in 20 years. Another heard a lullaby her grandmother used to hum. Some hear only their own breathing. Others hear none at all. And this is just the first chamber. To the right, there's a passage barely tall enough to crawl through. It's carved like a tunnel in living rock, perfectly smooth. You move through it on hands and knees, and the further in you go, the more the air thickens, not with heat, with pressure. Like the walls are listening and breathing back, you enter the second chamber. This one is triangular, lit by a soft blue glow that has no source. The walls are covered in a grid of shallow alcoves, each one holding a single object. A stone, a shell, a folded scrap of fabric, a lock of hair, hundreds of them, untouched by time, resting like prayers in stone pockets, each one accompanied by a sound so faint it feels imagined. Whispers, maybe. Hums. A heartbeat. No one has ever removed one, not because it's forbidden, because no one has dared. Visitors describe an overwhelming sense of belonging when they step into this chamber, as if each object is watching, remembering, waiting. One researcher said I felt like I was borrowing someone's childhood. Others burst into tears without knowing why. There is no altar, no writing, no guardians, just the unmistakable sense that you are not alone. The third chamber lies behind another seamless door, one that only opens if you sit on the ground and place your palm to the floor. Simple, childlike. You do it. The door melts away like mist. This chamber is different, octagonal, silent, dim, and in the middle, suspended on nothing, floats a circle of light. Not a flame, not a projection, just a perfect disk about the size of a dinner plate hovering 3 feet above the floor. It pulses, slowly, like breath. Visitors describe different colors, different rhythms. Some say the light grows brighter when approached. Others say it dims. Some hear music. Some hear nothing. But all agree on one thing. It listens. And for those who sit in silence long enough, something happens. Not revelation, not hallucination, but recognition, as if the light is scanning them. not judging, not measuring, just remembering. A monk once said, "It doesn't show you truth. It shows you your shape." Whatever that means. No one stays long, because after a few minutes, the pressure in the air changes. The walls begin to breathe, and the door reappears, not as an exit, as a suggestion, a whisper that says, "Go now." And you do. You crawl back. You pass the alcoves. You return to the first chamber. And the breath you forgot you were missing returns in a rush. You stagger back into the sunlight. The ledge is the same. The sky still huge. The wind still singing below. But something is different. You can't name it. You can only feel it. A kind of clarity, or maybe just presence. The monks won't ask what you saw. They never do. But they'll nod when you walk past. Not as if they know what happened. As if they remember it too. The door of the breathless ones doesn't lock. It doesn't close. It just waits. For the next still soul, for the next held breath, for the next person willing to stop speaking long enough to finally listen. It's not on any mountain. It's not on an island, or in the jungle, or beneath the desert sand. It's in the ocean, not under it, in it, floating. That's the first thing that confuses people. Because when you hear about ancient ruins in the sea, you picture underwater temples, sunken cities, columns choked by coral. But this is different. They call it the drifting ring. A circle of stone 60 meters wide, made of interlocking granite blocks arranged in a perfect loop. Floating, not submerged, somehow stable on the waves of the Philippine Sea. No visible anchor, no foundation. And yet it doesn't drift off. It doesn't sink. It just floats, always returning to the same general coordinates like a dream too stubborn to disappear. Satellite images picked it up in the 1990s. First thought to be a reef. But reef doesn't reflect radar the way this thing does. When scientists zoomed in, they found edges too clean, geometry too precise. A ring of stone in the ocean. It's not easy to reach. The currents around it are unpredictable. Boats are pushed off course, instruments glitch. Compasses spin slightly enough to make people queasy. But eventually, if the sea cooperates, you see it. From a distance, it looks like a mirage. Gray on blue, shimmering under the sun. As you approach, the scale becomes clear. Each granite block is the size of a car. And yet the seams between them are so tight you can't slip a credit card through. No moss, no seaweed, no barnacles. Nothing grows on it. It's as if the ocean has agreed to leave it untouched. You step onto it. It doesn't rock. It doesn't creak. It simply exists, solid beneath your feet, even though you know it's resting on water. No platform beneath. No flotation devices. Sonar has confirmed this over and over again. It shouldn't be possible. Granite doesn't float, but this does. Historians still debate whether the drifting ring is natural or artificial. A geological freak, a volcanic fluke, but none of that explains the design. There are no carvings, no symbols, no pillars. But the blocks aren't just aligned, they're graded. The tallest segments lie on the northern edge, the lowest on the southern. And at noon on the equinox, the shadow cast from the northern arc points directly through a gap in the southern curve. A pointer, a calendar, a kind of floating compass, perhaps. And when you stand in the center, something strange happens. You hear nothing. The ocean sound fades. The wind disappears. The creak of the boat you came on vanishes. It's not quiet. It's emptiness. Sound doesn't reach the center of the ring. It's like the ocean agreed to hold its breath. People who spend time inside the ring report odd sensations. A sudden wave of calm. Some experience disorientation. Others feel watched. Some describe it as stepping off the clock. like the world outside has paused, waiting for them to come back. One diver placed a metal pole just beneath the surface near the ring's edge, trying to check for hidden buoyancy mechanisms. It corroded in 24 hours. Another placed a block of fresh-cut driftwood on the ring's interior. It dried out, in full humidity, in 5 hours. Even the air inside the circle seems different, lighter, drier, as if it's been filtered. No one can explain why. There's no power source, no visible technology, no electromagnetic field, at least not one that can be measured traditionally. But animals avoid it. Fish do not swim beneath it. Birds do not rest on it. In one expedition, a drone sent overhead suddenly lost altitude and nosedived into the sea just above the ring. Its black box recorded a strange spike in static. No frequency, just a burst of absence, a gap, and then silence. One theory suggests the drifting ring is the last remnant of a larger structure, a former landmass, a temple platform, the topmost ring of a spiral tower that once rose above the sea and then sank below it. But that doesn't account for the floating, or the way it always drifts back to the same coordinates no matter the storm, no matter the current. It's not anchored, it's drawn. Some speculate that there's something beneath it, a magnetic anomaly, a buried structure, something that the ring is tied to not physically but intentionally, as if it remembers where it belongs. There's no evidence of human origin, no tool marks, no chisels. But the blocks are shaped in a way that suggests high knowledge of buoyancy geometry using trapped air, displaced weight internal pressure. One physicist described it as the most advanced primitive structure I've ever studied. Others just call it a miracle. You stand in the center now, heart steady, sky wide above, and for one moment, you understand. This isn't a ruin, it's a message. Not in words, in presence, in impossibility. Something built this, not for us, maybe not even for themselves, but simply to say, we were here. We shaped the sea. We taught the stone to float. We spoke in balance in circles and silence. You close your eyes. You listen to the silence that doesn't quite behave. And in that strange suspended quiet, you feel it. A pulse, not of your heart, not of the sea, of memory. And you know, without knowing, how that this ring has floated for 1,000 years. And it will float for 1,000 more, until someone remembers, or forgets, or listens closely enough to understand what shape silence can take when placed carefully on water. You hear it before you see it, not a sound in the usual sense, more like a rhythm, a distant pulsing pressure that thuds once every few seconds, low and soft, like a heartbeat buried under stone. It comes from the hills of Ethiopia, where the basalt rises in towering curtains, and the soil is red with iron. A place so remote, even satellite images offer little more than heat haze and guesses. But when you walk far enough, climb high enough, and listen long enough, you'll find the source. A wall, no taller than your waist, made of red stone blocks perfectly square stacked without mortar, in a zigzag pattern that runs across the landscape like a scar. It's not defensive. It doesn't encircle anything. It just continues for miles, then turns, then doubles back, then vanishes into a crevice before reappearing again on the other side. They call it the Wall of the Pulse, and no one knows who built it. There's no record of its origin. No inscriptions, no burial sites nearby. Just a wall that stretches across highland rock and seems to listen to the land beneath it. Because here's what makes it unforgettable: the stones vibrate. Not always. Not to the touch. Only when you press your ear against them. Only when the sun is high and the air is still. Only then do you hear it. Thud, thud, thud. Soft, regular, like the slow breathing of something impossibly large. Historians still debate whether this is a natural resonance or the result of some hidden mechanism. Seismologists have ruled out tectonic movement. There's no fault line here, no geothermal vents, no magnetic interference, and yet the rhythm remains. Every 27 seconds, exactly. No variation, no decay. It doesn't match the heartbeat of the Earth. It doesn't correspond to any human measurement. It's other. One theory suggests the wall was built not to hold something out or in, but to channel sound, to act as a kind of listening conduit. The zigzag design isn't aesthetic, it's acoustic. You walk along the wall, placing your hand on different stones, and find that some vibrate more than others. The pattern seems intentional, like a code, a sequence, a memory made tactile. An ancient musician once described it as a xylophone built by the planet. The wall doesn't change, but something inside you does when you hear it. People who've lain against the stones report sudden surges of emotion. Memories, not dreams, not hallucinations. Specific memories they'd forgotten, perfectly preserved and delivered like a whisper through granite. One man remembered the exact smell of his grandmother's kitchen. Another recalled the last sentence his father spoke before passing. A woman from Sweden who had never been to Ethiopia before began speaking in Ge'ez, a liturgical language she had never studied. These stories sound unbelievable until you feel the thud yourself, because it doesn't come from the wall. It comes through it. There are no chambers beneath. Ground-penetrating radar shows nothing below but dense volcanic rock. No tunnels, no cavities, just stone. And still the wall breathes, or remembers how to. There's a section of the wall shaped differently from the rest. A loop, a circle. Inside, a single standing stone rises taller than the others, polished smooth and tilted slightly forward. It's the only part of the wall that casts a perfect shadow at noon. Every equinox, the shadow touches the center of the circle, and that's when the pulse shifts. Just once, a hiccup in the rhythm, a stutter in the breath, as if the wall is reacting, as if it's marking time. Historians still debate whether the builders were mapping solar cycles, measuring the Earth's vibrations, or tuning themselves to something beyond language. No tools were found, no signs of quarrying. The stones are not from this region. They were transported here possibly from the Simien Mountains, over 200 kilometers away. Each one weighs half a ton. There are thousands of them, and someone placed them without error, without note, without asking to be remembered. You sit on the wall now. The air is dry. The wind has paused. You lower your ear to the stone, and there it is. Thud, thud. Not noise, not heartbeat. Echo from what or where or whom you don't know. You don't need to. Because in that moment, you feel it. The connection. Not to the builder, not to the purpose. To the act of listening. Of building something not to be seen but to be felt. You lean back, you breathe, and the pulse continues, unbothered, unchanged, waiting for the next listener to place their ear against memory and hear what silence has been saying all along. No one lives on the island anymore. That's the first thing you notice. There are docks, empty, paths winding through thickets of wind-bent trees, half-buried fences rusted and forgotten. But no people, just birds and stone. You're standing on Isla de la Geometria, a small landmass off the coast of Chile that doesn't appear on most maps, not because it's too small, but because too many people decided to stop mapping it because of what it holds. From above, it looks like an overgrown ruin. But when the drone footage first surfaced, quietly leaked from a forgotten geological survey, it revealed something else entirely. A grid, perfect squares, and rectangles carved into the island's surface, extending from coast to coast like the blueprint of a lost city. Not just random blocks, but interlocking patterns, some open, some raised, some sunken. A puzzle made of earth and stone. No signs of excavation, no written language, no stairways, just geometry baked into the bedrock. And strangest of all, the dimensions. Every block, every single one, measures precisely 1.618 meters wide. That number might not mean much at first, but it's the golden ratio, FOTS, the mathematical fingerprint of spirals, galaxies, sunflowers, shells. A ratio found in art, architecture, nature itself. And here, someone carved it into the bones of an island. Historians still debate whether Isla de la Geometria was a city, a calendar, or something far more abstract. But whatever it wasn't improvised. The cuts are clean, the angles deliberate, the placements follow a pattern, one that mathematicians are still trying to decode. Some think it's a map, not of land, but of movement. The blocks are spaced in such a way that walking across them creates a rhythm, left, right, long step, short pause. Not random, choreographed. As if the island was meant to be walked a certain way, as if the path through it reveals something only when followed precisely. Researchers who've attempted the pattern report strange sensations, a slowing of thought, a soft ringing in the ears. One described it as stepping into someone else's breath cycle. Another walked the full length and wept without knowing why. It's easy to dismiss those stories until you feel it for yourself. You walk the pattern now, not looking for meaning, just following the rhythm. The geometry takes you in a wide arc toward the island's center, where a raised platform waits, 10 meters wide, flat, polished, and in its center, a spiral carved into the rock, shallow and unassuming, exactly 1.618 meters in diameter. You kneel beside it. Place your hand in the groove. It's warm, not from the sun, from below. Some believe the island was once volcanic, that the spiral marks a vent or a fault line, but tests show no geothermal activity. The rock is old, stable, quiet, and still it breathes. Not with heat, with pressure. The air above the spiral vibrates gently, like the surface of a drum. A pulse you can't hear, but can feel if you stay still enough. One researcher compared it to the infrasound hum that elephants use to communicate across miles. Not sound as we know it, but frequency. The island is speaking. The question is to whom? Some theorists believe Isla de la Geometria was a resonance machine, a landscape carved to echo certain vibrations, amplifying signals through rock, air, and water. Not to be heard, but to be felt. Others suggest it's an ancient training ground, where geometry and movement combine to teach perception beyond the five senses. But no one's cracked the code, because the island keeps one last trick. Every equinox, the sun hits the spiral just right, and something happens. A shadow appears. Not a person, not an animal, just a shape, a perfect triangle, stretching from the spiral's edge to the northern platform. Not cast by a structure, cast by absence. A shadow with no source. It lasts 9 minutes, then it's gone, and then the birds fall silent. Every single one. For 30 seconds, Isla de la Geometria becomes so still, so quiet, so complete, it feels like you've stepped out of time. And when the birds begin again, they don't sound the same. They sing in unison, a low, droning tone, always the same, always exactly 1.618 seconds apart. Historians still debate whether that timing is real or just human projection. But you're here now, and you can feel it. This isn't a city. This isn't a ruin. It's a thought, a silent equation, a question etched into stone, not for answering, but for remembering. You sit on the edge of the platform looking out at the sea. The waves break far below. The wind moves gently through the grass, rustling without interrupting, and the spiral beneath you thrums faint but steady. It's not asking anything. It's not explaining. It's just being perfect, impossible, endless. You look up and realize that the clouds overhead are forming spirals too, not symbolic, just echoes of the same ratio, the same question, the same song. You leave the island quietly. No one stops you, but for days afterward, you dream in patterns. You think you've seen caves before. You think you know how the earth folds itself in secret limestone hollows, bat-haunted chambers, glittering stalactites, and slow drips echoing like ancient clocks. But this one is different. This one doesn't glitter. It absorbs. Tucked beneath the Karakum Desert in Turkmenistan is a narrow fissure, no wider than your shoulders. You slide in sideways, brushing past sharp black rock and choking on the scent of dry stone and something metallic iron maybe. Or blood. And then it widens. You step into a void so dark your flashlight seems ashamed to shine. The beam stretches out only a few feet before giving up entirely. The walls don't reflect. They consume. This is the cave that eats light. That's not a nickname. That's the official name on the few survey reports that still exist, half-complete field logs that end abruptly mid-sentence without conclusion. The first team that explored it in 1974 never went past the first chamber. Their notes are simple. Light does not behave here. Retreated due to increasing vertigo. Sound distortion at 18 meters. Sound distortion. You test it. You clap your hands once. A sharp sound. No echo. Just a wet thud like striking flesh. Like the cave catches the sound and swallows it. You walk deeper. The floor is unusually smooth, natural basalt that feels poured rather than eroded. Like the chamber was cast in one motion. The walls aren't carved. They aren't natural either. They curve, elegantly, deliberately, and they're warm. You place your palm against the stone and recoil. It's like touching skin left too long in the sun. But there's no heat in the air, just in the stone. A subtle living warmth. There are no insects here, no dripping water, no bats. But you're not alone. You feel it, not watched, noticed. Like something is registering your presence, not actively, not with malice, just filing you away. A tiny vibration under your boots. A pulse too soft to hear, but deep enough to feel in your teeth. You pass the 20-meter mark. Your flashlight dies, not from batteries, from will. You click it off and back on. Nothing. You try another. Nothing. You are not blind. You are in blackness, and yet you can still see. Not with your eyes. With your body, shapes begin to emerge in your awareness. Angles. Curves. Like sonar. Like memory. Like the cave is telling you what's there before your mind can argue. You feel your way forward and stumble upon something new, a platform. Circular. Raised slightly. Cold. In the center, something sits. You can't see it. You don't need to. You know it. It's a sphere, perfectly smooth, perfectly still. You reach out, and the moment your fingers touch it, your thoughts go silent, not empty, just paused. No fear, no name, no identity, only stillness. The sphere hums, or maybe you hum, There's no way to separate the two. Researchers who've made it this far describe the experience the same way: a total mental reset. Not erasure, not trauma, calibration. As if the cave doesn't want you to be anything while inside it. Just present, just listening. You try to speak, but the words don't come. Not because you can't, because you forgot how. Time stutters here, watches stop, heartbeats stretch. There are accounts of people who spent minutes in the cave and emerged hours later. Others spent what felt like days and found that no time had passed at all. One explorer said it rearranges your clocks. Another simply whispered, it holds you. And then, let's go. What is it? A natural formation. A machine? A place where thought goes to sleep. Historians still debate whether the cave that eats light was formed by volcanic vents, alien geology, or human intervention thousands of years ago. But there's one clue. Near the furthest chamber, yet reached 30 meters from the entrance, someone carved a line into the floor. Just one. Shallow, long, clean. It curves, slightly spiraling outward, like a message or a key. But to what? Nobody knows. The cave hasn't changed, but you have. You walk back now, step by step, pulse steady. You don't need a flashlight. The walls remember you. They guide you gently to the exit, the way water guides its own stream bed. You emerge into daylight. The sun blinds you, but not for long, because part of you still sees in dark now. Part of you listens for silence. You never speak about it again, not because you're afraid, because no one would understand what the cave took and what it gave back. Just enough of you, rewritten in stillness. You didn't expect to find anything in the swamp. People never do, because swamps are supposed to swallow history, not protect it. They bury the past in layers of mud and rot, tangle it in roots and mildew. They do not build cathedrals. They do not leave monuments. But here deep in the Okefenokee of southern Georgia, hidden behind walls of cypress trees and clouds of mosquitoes thick enough to chew through denim, sites a structure that shouldn't be here. They call it the hollow spire, and it breathes. That's the first thing people notice, not the shape, not the silence, not the strange fact that it rises out of the muck completely upright. What they notice is that the air around it moves, in and out, subtly, with rhythm. Like lungs, the spire is made of smooth black stone slate or something older. It's roughly conical, about 20 feet tall, narrowing to a dull point with tiny apertures spaced irregularly along its surface. Those holes aren't random. They sing, or they used to. Back in the 1940s, a survey team cartographers working with a military mapping unit logged the structure as non-natural, acoustically reactive. They reported that when the wind hit the swamp at a particular angle, the holes in the spire emitted tones, low soft harmonic, a chord played by the air. They thought it was coincidence. Until the chord changed with the season. Every equinox and solstice, the tone shifted. Not by much, just enough to suggest intent. No one knows who built it. No local tribes claim it. It's not mentioned in folklore, not listed in any oral traditions. Even the name Hollow Spire wasn't assigned by the locals. It came from the survey team, who noticed that when you knock on the stone, the sound doesn't bounce, it's absorbed. Just like light in the cave, just like echoes in the chamber without time. The spire isn't hollow in the traditional sense, but it behaves like it's listening. Touch it with your bare hand and the surface is cool. Leave your hand there and the air changes. The swamp stills. The frogs quiet. Even the mosquitoes hesitate. It's as if the spire is reading you, and when you pull your hand away, you feel lighter. Like a breath you didn't know you were holding, just left your body. Like something you didn't know you carried, stayed behind. A burden unspoken. Some researchers say the spire was part of an ancient warning system, one that used the wind to communicate across long distances. Others believe it was a vessel designed to release sound, not capture it. Like a speaker made by a civilization that spoke in frequencies instead of words. One theory suggests it's alive, not in a biological sense, but conscious in a way we don't yet understand. Because people dream near it, deep lucid dreams, even those who visit briefly, just a few hours to take samples, snap photos, report dreaming of shapes they've never seen. Buildings without corners, cities with gravity that flows sideways. They dream in blue, not sky blue, not water blue, memory blue, the kind that fades the moment you try to explain it. People describe the same images over and over again. A staircase that descends forever. A woman with no face standing in reeds. A spire, this one, but taller, glowing from within like a lantern. They always wake up with a headache and a feeling that they left something behind. But what? No one knows. The spire gives no answers. It doesn't respond to vibration, doesn't resonate when struck. It has no inscriptions, no offerings at its base, just moss water and stone. Yet it endures through hurricanes, through floods, through fire. In 2007, a lightning strike ignited a massive blaze across the swamp, hundreds of acres scorched. When the smoke cleared, satellite images showed everything blackened except for one small patch, the spire, and the reeds around it, untouched, green, still breathing, a natural coincidence. Historians still debate it, but the fire lines around the spire were curved, too smooth, too intentional, as if something told the flames not here. You're standing near it now. The swamp hums, quietly. Cicadas water, your own thoughts trying to settle. You hear the wind shift, and then faintly, from somewhere inside the spire, a tone, low, perfect. A single note held just long enough for your chest to ache. Doesn't say anything. And somehow, it says everything. You step closer, watching the reeds part gently, as if moved by an invisible hand. The holes in the stone glisten slightly, though no rain has fallen in weeks. You reach out, your fingers touch the surface, and for a moment, you stop thinking, not because you're distracted, because there's nothing left to ask. The spire isn't here to explain. It's here to remember, to hold something for us, something we couldn't carry ourselves. You pull your hand away, slowly. The air exhales, the frogs start up again, and the wind drifts past, carrying the memory of a song that never needed to be heard out loud. The hollow spire remains, half hidden, half knowing, fully awake, and you walk away lighter than before. The rain never stops here. It doesn't pour, it whispers. A fine mist, steady and cold, falling from a sky locked in permanent twilight. The air tastes like stone. The ground sinks just enough to remind you this place doesn't welcome footsteps. And then through the trees, you see it. A building made of bone, or something that looks like it. The locals call it the house that remakes you. Not a metaphor, not a poem. A warning. It sits alone in the Carpathian forest, where Romania brushes the edge of myth and memory. No road leads to it. No trail reaches it. The canopy grows too thick for drones, and compasses twitch as soon as you approach. But it's there. Gray-white walls curve upward like ribs arched together at the top in a dome that looks suspiciously like a skull. The structure isn't big, maybe the size of a chapel, but it feels taller than it is. Wider. A trick of the shape or of your mind. No moss grows on it, no animals nest near it, And when you step close, the rain stops not around you but above the house itself. The roof doesn't get wet, not a single drop, as if it refuses water or remembers how to stay dry. Historians still debate whether it's a religious site, a natural formation, or something beyond classification. The material resists every test. It looks like fossilized bone, but it's not organic. It rings like metal when tapped, but doesn't conduct electricity. It's warm. Always. Even in the snow. People who've entered the house. That remakes. You say the same thing. I came out different. Not better, not worse. Just changed. Inside the space curves in ways that shouldn't be possible. Corners fold away into themselves. Ceilings slant down and then rise up again. There are no straight lines, no windows, just a soft glow from the walls themselves, as if the structure emits its own light. And at the center of the room there's a seat, simple, smooth, like a stone bench, but shaped to the human body with eerie precision. No one is required to sit there, but everyone eventually does. And what happens next varies. Some people cry. Some fall asleep. Some say they remember things that never happened. A second childhood. A city of gold beneath the sea. A language without sound. Others forget. Not just details, entire relationships. A man once emerged unable to recall his wife's name. But he could recite from memory a 7th century war prayer in Sogdian, a language he'd never studied. A woman lost her ability to write, but gained the capacity to visualize objects in 5-dimensional space. One child returned speaking fluently in a dialect that hasn't been used in over 800 years. They don't remember what happened inside the house. They only know they came out. Not the same. And then there are the echoes. Recordings taken inside the house always capture faint sounds, whispers, murmurs, breaths. But when analyzed, these sounds are not from the visitor. They're to them. Each recording seems personalized, as if the structure is speaking in code only the visitor understands. No decipherable words, just emotional resonance, a tone that knows your history. Historians still debate whether the house is reacting to the brain, the soul, or something deeper, because for some, the change is visible. A man emerged with different fingerprints. A woman's eye color shifted over 3 hours. One person's old scar, severe deep, the kind that marked them for life, was simply gone. And yet they were still them. Mostly, no one stays overnight. Something in the walls asks you to leave once you've sat. Not with voice or force, but presence. A suggestion that yes, your time is up, that the house has given you what you needed, or taken what you no longer require. And then when you step outside, you hear the rain again, and everything is louder, sharper. You notice the bend of every leaf, the curve of every cloud, colors you've never named, emotions you've never met. It's like the house dialed something open in you, like it pulled back a layer that had always been in the way. No one enters it twice, not because they aren't allowed, because they don't need to. They're done. The house remade them. You stand before it now, the forest behind you, the curve of that impossible roof before you. You step inside. The light is soft, the air warm. It smells like childhood, and the moment before sleep. You sit. The bench fits you, the silence holds you, and slowly, gently, you begin to remember things you never knew. A lullaby made of stars, a path made of feathers, the exact shape of your mother's heartbeat when she first held you. No one speaks. No one needs to. The house is already listening, already rewriting, not changing who you are, just reminding you who you were, before noise, before fear, Before forgetting, you close your eyes, you breathe, you let go, and the house lets go of you. You step back into the forest, not sure what's changed, but knowing something has. The rain greets you again. You smile. The house that remakes, you wait still and eternal for the next visitor. Not to explain, not to fix, just to hold. And when it's done, you won't have answers. You'll have clarity.